Tonight, you're stepping back into another world. A world where marble palaces rose beside coal mines, where fortunes were built on fire and steel, and where the richest men in America tried to buy eternity. But in one house, Breakwater Hall, a man begins to hear the echo of everything he's taken. 97 rooms of silence and not a single one that feels alive. What happens when a man who owns the world realizes the world no longer owns him? Would you give up your empire for peace? Would you trade gold for forgiveness? Tonight, we fall asleep inside that question. This is Old Worlds for Sleep, where the past isn't distant, it's whispering just beyond the candlelight. So find a quiet place, dim the room, maybe let the wind outside your window sound like the Atlantic below Breakwater Hall, and drift with us into the Gilded Age of shadows. You open your eyes to darkness, no city noise, no hum of air conditioning, just silence, broken only by the faint crackle of a dying fire somewhere far across the room. For a moment, panic grips you. You reach for your phone, your bedside lamp, anything familiar, but your fingers brush silk, heavy and cold. The mattress beneath you feels wrong. Too soft, too perfect. The sheets aren't cotton. They're smoother, cooler, like flowing water sliding across your skin. Your eyes adjust slowly, revealing towering mahogany bedposts carved with impossible detail. Drapes of velvet fall from a canopy high above you, so high the ceiling vanishes into shadow. You sit up. Your breath fogs faintly in the air. The fire's dying. The light is dim and yellow. You can hear the faint whine of wind pressing against glass. This isn't your bedroom. This isn't even your century. You throw back the covers and stare. The blankets are silk, layered 6 thick, finished with a fur throw that must have cost a fortune. A fire crackles weakly in a marble hearth the size of a doorway. The air smells faintly of coal smoke and lavender. For a few seconds you can't move. You just sit there, heartbeat hammering, trying to make sense of what you're seeing. Then, a knock at the door. Soft, measured, too polite to belong in your century. Enter, you manage to say, your voice sounding strange in the still air. The door opens and a man steps in. Late 50s maybe, with a severe jaw and hair slicked perfectly back. He's wearing black and white with the posture of someone trained in discipline. Behind him, 4 younger men follow, each carrying silver trays. "Good morning, sir," the older one says. "It is 7:15. I trust you slept well." You blink. He's not joking. He's serious. He's calling you, sir. He continues briskly, "Your morning coffee, sir." One of the younger servants steps forward with a silver tray, bearing a porcelain cup painted in gold leaf. The coffee smells rich, dark, unfamiliar. You reach for it automatically, your hand trembling. You catch your reflection in the polished silver tray, hair neatly parted, a face slightly different, sharper. Your chest tightens. What would you do right now if you woke up in a stranger's body? If the world outside that door wasn't 2025, but 1895? The man, your valet, you realize, moves toward the enormous window. "Shall I open the curtains, sir?" Before you can answer, he pulls a thick cord and the velvet drapes part. Daylight floods in, gray and cold and real. 5th Avenue. Below you, horse-drawn carriages clatter across cobblestones. Ladies in wide hats hurry under parasols. Across the street, Central Park lies dusted in snow. It's New York, but not the one you know. It's cleaner, emptier, hungrier. A city of steam and smoke, money and misery. You whisper it before you can stop yourself. "What year is this?" The valet doesn't react. "It is February, sir. 1895. You swallow hard. 1895. He turns, studying you with mild concern. "Will you be taking your breakfast in the morning room, or shall I serve it here?" You nod dumbly. The morning room. "Very good, sir. Shall I lay out your suit? You're expected at Grand Central at 9. Mr. Morgan and Mr. Carnegie will be joining you for breakfast aboard your private car." You stare at him. "Your private car? Mr. Morgan? As in J.P. Morgan? Mr. Carnegie? The Carnegie?" You don't answer right away, because suddenly everything clicks. The absurd wealth, the mansion, the servants. You've woken up as one of them. One of the Gilded Age titans. A man whose fortune could buy entire neighborhoods. Whose decisions could ruin cities, or feed them. Whose comfort was built on the suffering of thousands. The valet's voice breaks your trance. "Will there be anything else, sir?" You look at him, at the silver, the opulence, the firelight gleaming on the carved mahogany walls. And quietly, you ask the question that will follow you through this world. Is this what it feels like to have it all? He bows slightly. Indeed, sir. But you're not so sure. You sip the coffee. It's perfect, of course, but the taste leaves something bitter on your tongue. You glance toward the window again at the street below, at the city that hums just beyond your reach. A horse neighs. Somewhere in the distance, a factory whistle screams. You wonder, how many people woke up this morning hungry so that you could wake up in silk? How many hands mine the coal that keeps your fire burning? How many children work 12-hour shifts to buy you this coffee, this comfort, this illusion of control? The valet clears his throat softly. Your bath is prepared, sir. You nod absently. Of course. He gestures, and the younger servants retreat, their movements perfectly synchronized. The door closes behind them, sealing you once again inside this cathedral of wealth. You set down the porcelain cup, the handle gleaming with your monogram, someone else's initials, etched into the gold. The room feels suddenly colder, the silence heavier. And as you swing your legs over the side of the bed, your bare feet sinking into a rug that could pay a laborer's rent for a decade, a single thought grips you. This isn't just a dream. This is a lesson. If you woke up as the richest man in 1895, would you still recognize yourself? Would you enjoy the luxury? Or would you hear the cost echoing in every heartbeat? You rise, heart pounding, as the world of the Gilded Age waits beyond the door. Welcome to your new life, Mr. Vander Hughes. The knock comes again, softer this time, rhythmic, rehearsed. When you answer, the door opens to reveal a quiet army. 4 men glide in formation, their footsteps muffled by the carpet thick as moss. None of them speak above a whisper. Each already knows his role. Steam curls from the open doorway of the adjoining bath. Somewhere beyond it, the faint metallic sound of pouring water, measured by clockwork precision. Your bath is drawn, sir, says Richardson, the older valet you met moments ago. His tone is respectful, but every syllable carries authority. This man may serve you, yet he controls the entire ritual of your morning. He moves with the certainty of a conductor before an orchestra, and the others follow his cue. One opens the wardrobe. Another unfolds a towel on a chair. A third begins polishing the golden pocket watch you apparently own. You realize you're watching a performance, a daily dance designed to make one man's comfort look effortless. Have you ever seen service so precise it feels choreographed? What would it feel like if every breath you took depended on someone else's timing? Richardson gestures toward the wardrobe. Rows of suits hang like soldiers on parade, gray, navy, charcoal, each tagged with the day's appointments in elegant script. Shoes rest on individual wooden stands, each pair polished to a mirrored shine. He selects one without hesitation. The navy pinstripe today, I think. Mr. Morgan prefers formal mornings. You nod automatically, though you have no idea what that means. The youngest valet approaches with a tray of brushes, razors, and glass bottles. Your grooming set, sir. He kneels beside the vanity, preparing the implements with almost religious care. The silver brushes gleam under the morning light. Your reflection in the mirror looks strange, sharper, older, composed. Richardson pours warm water into a porcelain bowl, steam rising like a ghost between you. He begins lathering shaving soap with a badger hair brush, the faint scent of sandalwood filling the room. You hesitate. I can manage. He interrupts gently but firmly. Please, sir, allow me. The blade glides along your jaw, the scrape precise and steady. You watch the ritual unfold, aware that a single slip could draw blood, yet the man's hand never trembles. This is his craft, his livelihood, his dignity. Would you trust a stranger with a blade at your throat every morning? Or does trust come easily when you're the one holding all the power? When it's over, a warm towel appears. Your skin tingles. Richardson steps back, inspecting his work like an artist judging a finished portrait. Perfect, sir. You stand while the others move swiftly, layering garments like armor. Undershirt. Vest. Starched collar that pinches the neck. Silk tie precisely knotted. Jacket brushed, cuffs adjusted. Not a wrinkle, not a thread out of place. The entire process takes 20 minutes, but it feels like hours. An eternity of quiet hands, invisible eyes, and practiced deference. You can't help wondering what happens if one of them makes a mistake. If a cufflink drops. If a button snags. Is punishment quiet too? Does failure echo through the servant corridors while the master never hears a sound? Richardson clears his throat. Would you like me to have the carriage brought around at 8:30, sir? Yes, you say, though the word feels foreign. He nods once. Very good, sir. The others retreat, leaving behind a faint scent of starch and soap. The door closes with the soft finality of habit. Silence returns, but it's a different silence than before. Not emptiness, expectation. The room hums with invisible energy, the residue of obedience. You move toward the mirror. The man staring back at you is immaculate, wealth draped in wool and precision. Every thread whispers privilege. Yet beneath the perfection, your pulse beats faster, uneasy. If strangers dressed you every morning, would you still feel like yourself? At what point does service become surrender, for them or for you? A discreet knock breaks the thought. Richardson again, carrying a silver tray with a sealed envelope. Your correspondence, sir. Urgent. He places it on the writing desk, then steps back into the role of shadow. You open the envelope. Inside, an embossed card written in sweeping ink. Breakfast engagement confirmed. Grand Central Depot, private car at 9 sharp. Guests, Mr. J.P. Morgan, Mr. Andrew Carnegie. Your stomach tightens. These aren't names from legend. They're living men waiting to dine with you. You look up at Richardson. Remind me, what time does the carriage leave? 8:30, sir. Shall I have coffee brought to the morning room while the footmen prepare your outerwear? Yes. Thank you, Richardson. He bows slightly and disappears again, leaving you alone with the gleam of polished surfaces and the faint echo of footsteps fading down the hall. The clock on the mantel ticks precisely, each second measured, managed, controlled. Even time feels domesticated here. You glance around the chamber one last time. The wardrobe of endless suits, the gleaming vanity, the bed smoothed to perfection by unseen hands. It's beautiful, flawless, deadly in its perfection. Do you envy this life yet, or fear it? Would you trade your freedom for this kind of certainty? Somewhere down the corridor, a bell rings softly, the signal for breakfast. You straighten your cuffs, square your shoulders, and take a breath. The performance continues. Steam clouds the air, curling around marble columns like ghosts from another age. The sound of water trickling from bronze faucets echoes through the enormous bathroom. If bathroom is even the right word. It's more like a temple built to worship luxury. A mosaic floor glitters beneath your bare feet, every tile hand-laid, imported from Italy. The walls shimmer with pale green marble veined in gold. The bath itself, an oval basin the size of a small boat, steams gently, perfumed with rose oil and something sharper, more exotic. Water at 103 degrees, sir, Richardson reports, consulting a small thermometer with the precision of a scientist. Exactly as you prefer. You nod, though it isn't you who prefers anything. You're merely inhabiting the man who does. He gestures, and 2 junior attendants appear. One folds your robe neatly over a chair. The other sprinkles rose petals across the surface of the bath, like a ritual offering. For a moment, you just stand there, watching the petals spin slowly on the water. Red, pink, white, luxury floating on heat and steam. What would you think, standing in that kind of beauty? Would it calm you, or remind you how much ugliness it hides? You step into the water and it's perfect. Almost too perfect. The kind of warmth that makes you forget your own shape. You sink lower until the heat swallows your chest and shoulders and your breath fogs in the cool air. From somewhere behind you, porcelain clinks softly, a tray being placed within reach. Your morning tea, sir, Richardson announces. And toast, lightly buttered. He places the silver tray across the bath. On it, delicate china, sugar cubes, and a newspaper folded to the front page. The headline hits like a spark. Labor unrest continues at Pittsburgh Steel Works. Beneath it, smaller print. Workers demand shorter hours, increased pay, safety reforms. Factory owners refuse negotiations. You stare at the words, steam rising around you. In your other life, this would be a history lesson. Now it's a mirror. You can almost see it. The foundries blazing in the night, men drenched in sweat and soot, hammers striking steel until their bodies give out. They built the empire you're bathing in. They're the reason your bath water is hot, your linens clean, your breakfast imported. How many burned hands built your fortune? How many voices were silenced so that this silence could exist? Richardson adjusts a towel on the nearby rack, pretending not to notice your pause. Servants in this world are trained not to witness their master's thoughts. Will you require the barber today, sir? He asks softly. No, you say. That won't be necessary. He bows slightly. Very good, sir. Shall I remind Mr. Hargrove about your departure for the station? Yes, I'll be ready at 9. He exits and the door closes with a soft click. You're alone again, surrounded by steam and silence. You reach for the tea, hot, delicate, flavored with something floral, and take a sip. Then another. But the taste turns metallic in your mouth as your eyes return to the newspaper. You imagine the men in Pittsburgh reading their own headlines if they could read at all. You picture a boy, maybe 12 or 13, sweeping coal dust from the factory floor, his hands raw, his lungs already burned. He doesn't even know your name, but every moment of his life sustains your comfort. Could you look that boy in the eye and still enjoy this bath? Would you tell him it's worth it, that progress demands his pain? You sink deeper into the water until only your face remains above the surface. The ceiling above is painted with clouds and angels. They stare down at you as if judging, their eyes eternal and empty. A sudden pang of dizziness hits, or maybe guilt feels like vertigo here. You close your eyes. The world blurs, the steam thickens, and for a brief moment, you wonder what this man, this titan of industry whose life you now inhabit, thinks when he lies here every morning. Does he feel pride? Satisfaction? Or the same hollow ache gnawing at you now? Somewhere outside, a bell rings twice, the house's internal clock system marking the half hour. Even time is scheduled here, orchestrated like the servant's movements. You open your eyes. The petals still drift. The tea grows cold. The newspaper ink bleeds where your wet fingers touched it, the headline blurring like a memory fading underwater. You stand, the air biting cold against your skin. An attendant rushes in, wrapping you in warm towels, careful not to meet your gaze. The ritual continues, efficient, wordless, intimate without intimacy. When you're finally dressed again, the air outside the bathroom feels heavy with scent and silence. The servants bow and vanish, leaving behind the faint trace of lavender and steam. You pause before leaving, one hand resting on the marble doorframe. If comfort demands that others live without it, is it still comfort or complicity? And if wealth can buy warmth, can it ever buy peace? Down the corridor, the mansion hums to life. The faint clatter of china, the muted steps of servants preparing for your next act in the performance of power. You exhale, straighten your collar, and step into the corridor. The bathwater still ripples behind you, a silent monument to a world that measures human worth in profit and polish. When you return from the bath, the bedroom has changed. The bed is perfectly remade, sheets pulled tight, not a single crease in sight. Sunlight filters through the lace curtains, striking motes of dust that hang motionless in the air. On the far side of the room, your valet has transformed the space into a private theater of elegance. 3 standing forms display 3 entire outfits, each perfectly arranged as if for inspection by a king. The first, a deep gray morning suit with silk lapels. The second, a tweed ensemble, dignified but casual. The third, dark navy with a gleam of silver buttons and a crisp white waistcoat, power tailored into fabric. Your choices for the day, sir, Richardson says, stepping aside like a curator unveiling his exhibit. The blue worsted is ideal for appointments in town. The gray would suit a luncheon at the club. You stare at the display. The difference between them feels trivial, shades of vanity in fabric form. But to Richardson, to this world, the choice matters. Every thread speaks. What would you choose if the wrong color could cost you respect? How much of who we are is decided before we even open our mouths? You glance from suit to suit, feeling oddly overwhelmed. These clothes aren't garments. They're armor, each designed to tell the world exactly how much you're worth. Finally, you nod toward the navy. The blue, you say. Excellent, sir. The ritual begins. 2 attendants move with practiced rhythm, lifting, folding, presenting. Shirts starched to stiffness. Buttons of mother of pearl that flash in the light. The fabric is heavier than modern cloth. It doesn't flow. It commands. Richardson assists, his fingers deft, his manner reverent. Each movement has purpose. The tug of the collar, the flick of a cuff, the adjustment of the tie until it sits at a mathematically perfect angle. You stand still, watching yourself disappear layer by layer beneath symbols of authority. Do you dress to express, or to hide? Have you ever felt yourself vanish behind the image others expect to see? When the waistcoat buttons close, your breathing changes. The fabric is tight across your ribs, as though it's designed to remind you that this body doesn't belong to ease. Richardson takes a step back, studying his work. Flawless, sir. He gestures toward a full-length mirror framed in gilded wood. You turn. The reflection that stares back isn't just dressed, it's constructed. Hair slicked, collar gleaming, posture impeccable. The man in the mirror doesn't look human. He looks inevitable. Your watch, sir. Richardson places a gold pocket watch into your hand, its surface engraved with the initials Vich Vander Hughes. The name tastes foreign in your mind but familiar on your tongue. When you open it, the ticking is soft, deliberate. Inside the lid, an inscription. Time rewards the ruthless. You close it quietly, the words echoing like a warning. At the vanity, the youngest valet stands ready with the finishing touches. Cufflinks shaped like eagles, a silver tie pin studded with a diamond no larger than a tear. You catch your own reflection again as he fastens it. The sparkle feels obscene. Your outer coat, sir, Richardson says. 2 footmen step forward, holding a dark overcoat lined in fur. It smells faintly of cedar and old money. When it settles across your shoulders, its weight feels like a verdict. Shall I bring your gloves and hat? You nod. Yes, thank you. The gloves are kid leather, the hat a black bowler polished to perfection. Each detail another small ritual of control. You slide your hands into the gloves and they fit as though made for you, which of course they were. You catch Richardson watching you just for a moment. His eyes betray something almost human, pride maybe or pity, but it vanishes as quickly as it came. Mr. Hargrove reports the carriage is ready, sir, he says. Breakfast is served in the morning room. Will you dine before departure? Yes, you answer. I'll be down shortly. He bows and exits, leaving you in silence once more. You look around the room, at the towering bed, the gleaming furniture, the neat line of servants' footprints fading in the thick carpet. This room, this house, this life, all of it operates like clockwork, every person trained to orbit around your convenience. Would you envy this power if you saw the machinery that sustains it? Or would you feel what you feel now, that you're no longer a man but a function? You take one last look at the mirror. The man staring back radiates confidence. He's ready to command factories, markets, lives. But behind his eyes, you can still see the question forming, quiet, defiant, dangerous. If everything around you obeys, who do you answer to? The clock chimes 8:30, right on schedule. You pick up the pocket watch again. The inscription gleams in the morning light. Time rewards the ruthless. You slip it into your vest pocket, straighten your cuffs, and head for the door. The servants will fall into formation as you descend the grand staircase. A silent salute to their employer, their master, their living god of industry. But all you can think as your footsteps echo through the hall is how small one man can feel inside a life this large. The morning room glows with soft, filtered light. The air smells faintly of polish and citrus. Somewhere unseen, a clock ticks behind silk wallpaper, steady, elegant, relentless. The table stretches nearly the full length of the room, mahogany polished so perfectly that sunlight scatters off its surface in tiny halos. 12 place settings, 12 silver covers, 12 crystal glasses. For one man. You hesitate at the doorway. The servants are already waiting, 6 of them, motionless, eyes lowered. Every gesture rehearsed. Every breath synchronized to your presence. Your breakfast, sir, says Hargrove, the butler, bowing slightly. He gestures and the ballet begins. The covers lift. Steam rises. Silver gleams. Porcelain clinks. Eggs from Rhode Island farms. Strawberries shipped overnight from Florida. Oranges sliced into perfect half-moons, imported by rail at absurd cost. Coffee brewed from beans carried here from Brazil by private vessel. The wealth of an empire condensed into a single meal. Could you eat like this knowing where it came from? Would the taste still feel sweet if you knew how bitterly it was earned? You take a seat at the head of the table. The chair creaks softly, the only imperfection in the room. Richardson stands behind your shoulder, pouring coffee with steady precision. He adds cream without asking because of course he knows how you take it. The first sip burns your tongue. It's perfect, and somehow unbearable. You unfold the newspaper placed beside your plate. The ink smudges faintly against your fingertips. The headline strikes like a blow. Strike at Pittsburgh Mill continues. Management considering private security response. The words blur slightly as you read. Workers demanding a 10-hour day instead of 12. 1 day of rest per week. Safety rails on dangerous machines. Demands described by the paper as outrageous. You glance at your reflection in the silver teapot, distorted, ghostly. Somewhere, a young man stands at a furnace right now, sweat and soot clinging to his skin, hammering steel that will become the rails your fortune rides upon. He doesn't know your name, but his life belongs to it. What would you tell him if you could? That progress has a price? That comfort requires sacrifice, just never yours? Hargrove glides forward with quiet efficiency. Shall I serve the second course, sir? You nod without speaking. The servants move as one, removing untouched plates, replacing them with new ones. A poached fish, pale and delicate. A muffin spread with marmalade that smells faintly of orange blossoms. Everything elegant, excessive, absurd. They don't ask if you're hungry. Hunger isn't part of this life. Eating is a performance, proof that you can. You look toward the tall window beside you. Beyond the glass, New York moves slowly awake, a blur of horses, vendors, carriages, and smoke. You can almost hear the clang of trolley bells, the cries of children hawking newspapers. A city alive, grinding forward, one weary soul at a time. And here you sit, wrapped in silence and linen. What's the sound of privilege, if not the absence of noise? Would you trade this quiet for an honest day's work? Or has comfort already claimed you? Hargrove clears his throat gently. Mr. Morgan and Mr. Carnegie have confirmed they'll meet you at the Grand Central car, sir. The carriage will depart at 9 sharp. You nod again. Thank you, Hargrove. He hesitates, a fraction too long for formality, then steps back into line. The servants remain still, eyes downcast, awaiting your next command. Their stillness feels heavier than movement, as though the air itself waits for permission to breathe. You glance around at the table, the uneaten food, the spotless silver, the wealth displayed like a sermon. You push the plate away. That will be all. The butler bows. The servants collect the dishes, moving with mechanical grace. Within seconds, the abundance vanishes as if it never existed. Only the faint aroma of coffee remains. You rise, stepping toward the window. The glass is cold beneath your fingertips. Outside, a child darts between carriages, barefoot, shouting headlines for a penny. You can't hear his words through the glass, but you can imagine them. Strike spreads. Violence feared. The morning sun catches his hair, gold against grime. He looks no older than 12. How far would you go to protect a system that keeps that boy hungry so you can live like this? And if you turned away, would that make you innocent? Or just another spectator in someone else's struggle? Behind you, the last servant closes the door. Silence returns, thick and sterile. You stare down at your gloves resting on the table. They're spotless. Too spotless. For the first time since you arrived in this world, you understand the unspoken rule of the Gilded Age. Clean hands belong only to those who never touch what makes them rich. The clock chimes 8:45. Your carriage waits. Your meeting with Morgan and Carnegie looms. Titans who see men not as lives but as labor. You pull on the gloves. The leather is soft as breath. And as you leave the dining room, you realize something unsettling. Luxury doesn't numb guilt. It preserves it, embalmed beneath etiquette and silver. If wealth were a mirror, would you dare to look into it? Or would you, like so many before you, polish the surface until the reflection disappears? The front doors of the mansion swing open like a curtain parting before a performance. Outside, winter sunlight glints off the polished black carriage waiting at the curb. 2 horses stamp impatiently in the cold, their breath puffing in white clouds. A footman in livery holds the door, eyes fixed on the ground. You pause at the threshold, adjusting your gloves. Behind you, the household staff stand in silent formation. 40 people frozen in ceremony, a human mirror reflecting your importance. Your carriage awaits, sir, says Hargrove. You step forward. The marble steps echo under your shoes. The horses snort softly as the footman opens the door. The interior smells of leather, tobacco, and faint traces of perfume. Luxury and decay sharing the same breath. Inside, the cushions swallow you whole. A wool blanket rests across your knees, the monogram vig stitched in gold thread. The driver cracks the reins, and the carriage lurches forward into the streets of New York. If you could ride through history just once, where would you sit? Among the gilded or the forgotten? And what would you see through their glass? The wheels clatter over cobblestones slick with frost. The city unfolds like a living machine, elegant facades giving way to soot-stained tenements, gas lamps flickering against pale morning light. At first, everything gleams. Brownstones trimmed in marble, shop fronts displaying imported silks and clockwork marvels. Ladies in furs sweep down sidewalks, attended by nursemaids and coachmen. The air smells faintly of wealth, coal smoke laced with perfume. Then the neighborhoods shift. The horses slow as the street narrows, the smooth rhythm replaced by the hollow sound of wooden wheels over cracked stone. Here the air thickens with smoke and steam. Laundry hangs like gray flags between buildings. Children dart through puddles, chasing dogs, their laughter sharp and hollow. A woman stands in a doorway, shawl wrapped tight, eyes hollow from hunger or exhaustion, or both. She watches your carriage pass without expression, as if you were weather, not a man. You glance away, but her reflection follows you in the window glass. How much of the world do we ignore just by looking straight ahead? If comfort demands blindness, is ignorance a privilege or a wound? At the next corner, a newsboy holds up a paper. His hands are red from cold, his voice hoarse. Mill violence spreads. 3 dead in Pittsburgh. The driver doesn't slow. The sound fades behind you, replaced by the rhythm of hooves and wheels. You sink deeper into the seat, the newspaper headlines still echoing in your mind. 3 dead. Somewhere far away, lives ended because men like you refused to listen. You think of the bath this morning, the silk sheets, the roses floating in warm water. It feels obscene now, like a crime disguised as ritual. If luxury requires distance, how far would you go to keep your hands clean? Would you still sip champagne if you could hear the hunger outside the glass? The carriage turns onto Fifth Avenue again, climbing toward Grand Central. The street widens. The air clears. The poverty disappears as if erased by design. Here stand the new palaces of America. Marble mansions built to mimic Europe, each one larger than the last. Columns, domes, iron gates. Every brick a statement. I have more. Your own name, Vander Hughes, sits among them, etched in granite above a doorway you barely remember commissioning. A beggar sits on the curb just beyond it, hat extended. The driver moves to whip the horses forward, but you raise a hand. Stop. The carriage halts. Hargrove glances back, startled. Sir? You reach into your coat and pull a coin from your pocket. Solid gold, warm from your hand. You open the door and lean out, the cold air slicing against your face. The beggar looks up, startled by the motion. His beard is gray, his eyes watery, his gloves worn through at the fingertips. You hold out the coin. For a moment, he hesitates as though he can't believe it's real. Then his hands tremble as he takes it. Thank you, sir, he whispers. The door closes. The carriage moves again. Hargrove clears his throat softly. A generous gesture, sir. You nod. Perhaps. But the word feels wrong. Because you know that coin won't change anything. Tomorrow, another beggar will sit in that same spot, and another carriage will pass without slowing. What does generosity mean when the system itself is cruel? Is a single act of kindness redemption, or decoration? The carriage gathers speed as it nears the station. The buildings blur past. Temples of glass, cathedrals of greed, monuments to a nation drunk on progress. The horses' hooves echo like a drumbeat, steady and relentless. You glance once more at the street through the window, the beggar fading behind you, the city ahead gleaming like a promise it will never keep. In the reflection of the glass, your eyes meet your own, and for the first time, you see the distance between the man you were and the man you appear to be. Can wealth ever move fast enough to outrun its shadow? Or does every fortune carry its own ghost, pacing quietly beside it? The carriage rounds the final corner. Grand Central rises before you, vast and proud, a cathedral of iron and glass built to glorify movement itself. Steam curls from the engines, clouds swallowing the sky. The driver reins in the horses. Hargrove steps down first, brushing dust from his gloves before opening your door. Grand Central, sir. Mr. Morgan and Mr. Carnegie await. You step onto the platform. The air smells of coal, iron, and ambition. Men in top hats hurry past, trailed by porters carrying trunks stamped with initials of dynasties. Somewhere above, a clock tolls 9. You pause a moment before walking toward your private rail car, its brass fittings gleaming, your name carved on the side. The station buzzes with voices, machinery, and human need. But for a fleeting heartbeat, all you hear is the memory of hooves and hunger on a frozen street. Would you rather arrive early to history, or arrive human to it? When the train of progress departs, who do you think it leaves behind? You exhale, lift your chin, and walk forward. The meeting awaits. The illusion continues. And behind you, New York swallows the sound of its own contradictions. Your private rail car waits on a separate track, gleaming like a coin fresh from the mint. The brass fixtures sparkle beneath the station lights. Polished mahogany walls reflect the glow of lanterns, and inlaid panels shimmer with gold leaf and mother of pearl. This isn't transportation. It's theater. A porter opens the door, bowing deeply. Your guests have arrived, sir. Inside, the car smells of cigar smoke and ambition. The breakfast table, long and narrow, gleams beneath cut glass lamps. At its head sits a man whose name could shake the economy, J. Pierpont Morgan. Opposite him, stocky, bearded, radiating brute confidence, is Andrew Carnegie. Two kings of capital, each carving America in his image. And now you sit among them. Ah, Vander Hughes? Morgan booms, rising just enough to suggest respect, not equality. His voice carries the gravel of authority, the kind used to issue orders to nations. Good of you to join us. Carnegie grins, his Scottish accent thick and sharp. We were just saying how your mill trouble's been in all the papers. Thought we might offer our condolences. His grin widens, or congratulations, depending how you see it. You take your seat. The porter pours coffee, the dark liquid rippling like oil. Silver trays reveal eggs, smoked fish, and toast glistening with butter. Morgan leans back, fingers steepled. Labor unrest is a contagion, my friend. Handle it decisively or it spreads. Carnegie chuckles. Pinkertons are cheaper than negotiation, and less messy in the long run. The words hit harder than expected. They speak casually as if discussing weather, rain, sunshine, blood. You force a polite smile. Messy for whom? Morgan glances up, his small eyes gleaming behind round spectacles. For everyone, he says. Markets don't tolerate sentiment. What would you say sitting here between men who rule without remorse? Would you play along, or speak the truth and risk becoming their next target? The porter refills your cup and Morgan waves him away. I tell Washington the same thing every year, he continues. Stability above all. The nation can survive anything but uncertainty. Carnegie nods. And nothing breeds uncertainty like men who think they deserve more than their station. You set your fork down. Their station. Morgan studies you, half smiling. Surely you don't mean to argue the moral worth of laborers, Vander Hughes? You built your fortune on the same premise as we did, that not all men are created equal in capacity or courage. The words taste poisonous. And yet, part of you knows this is how empires are spoken into being, calmly, over breakfast, with perfect grammar and poison logic. You sip your coffee to hide your discomfort. The bitterness suits the moment. If you could interrupt history, would you do it? Or does comfort make courage impossible? Morgan unfolds a telegram handed to him by an aide. Steel prices are rising, he says, scanning it. We could consolidate rail orders, drive smaller producers to sell. Make it clean. Carnegie grins. And we'll call it progress. They clink glasses of orange juice like generals toasting victory. You realize this table isn't about breakfast, it's a battlefield. Every smile is a weapon, every word a maneuver. These men don't eat, they devour. The conversation drifts from markets to politics, to senators bought and sold, to new technologies that promise faster exploitation. Edison's name surfaces. So does Westinghouse's. They debate electricity as though it's a new religion. Morgan smirks. The future belongs to whoever owns the current. Or the workers who survive it, you murmur, too quietly for him to notice. Can innovation exist without injustice? Or does every bright idea cast a darker shadow behind it? Carnegie slaps the table, breaking the silence. We're builders, gentlemen. The masses won't remember the sweat, only the skylines. He looks at you directly. And what is Breakwater Hall, if not your own skyline? You almost answer, but stop. He means your mansion. Your 97-room declaration of dominance. The thought suddenly sickens you. An investment, you say carefully. In appearance. Morgan chuckles approvingly. Precisely. Wealth must be visible or it isn't power, it's philanthropy. The train jerks slightly as it begins to move. Outside the window, the city slides past. Brick, smoke, faces blurred by speed. You realize how literal their vision is. They are men riding their own locomotive world, convinced the track beneath them will never end. Would you dare pull the brake on a train like this? Could you live knowing it might crush everything behind you? Morgan checks his pocket watch. Gentlemen, I have a meeting with the Treasury by noon. Carnegie will speak later about Pittsburgh. He stands. The air shifts with him, power made physical. Do handle your labor matter quietly, Vander Hughes. Sympathy is bad for business. He leaves with a nod that feels like a command. Carnegie remains a moment longer, finishing his coffee. Morgan's right, he says, softer now. But take it from me, if you ever start feeling sorry for them. He sets the cup down. Don't. It'll only make dying rich harder. He smiles, genial and terrible, then departs. You're left alone in the polished silence, surrounded by silver and steam. Outside, the city flashes by, rooftops, smokestacks, chimneys coughing soot into a pale winter sky. You look down at your reflection in the coffee. It trembles slightly with the motion of the train. For the first time, you see not wealth but weight, every dollar resting on invisible shoulders. If power isolates you from consequence, how long before you forget what pain feels like? How many empires have fallen because their masters stopped listening to the sound of suffering? The porter returns quietly. Shall I clear, sir? You nod. Yes, please. He begins collecting the dishes with careful grace. His hands are rough, his knuckles scarred, signs of real labor, the kind none of the men at this table will ever touch. For a moment you want to thank him, to apologize, to say something human. But the words catch in your throat, smothered by decorum and fear. You simply watch him work, and realize the truth Morgan and Carnegie will never admit. Without men like him, their fortunes collapse. And yet they'll never know his name. The train whistle sounds again, shrill, endless, defiant. It's the anthem of the Gilded Age. And you, unwilling passenger though you are now part of its song. The train races north through gray winter light, its wheels humming like the heartbeat of an empire. The private car sways gently, cushioned by wealth, velvet seats, silk curtains, a decanter of brandy glowing amber in the corner. Yet outside the window, America looks different now. Smokestacks rise like blackened monuments. Vast mills stretch to the horizon, their furnaces pulsing orange in the distance. Fields of ice and soot replace the polished avenues of New York. The Gilded Age, stripped of polish, reveals its bones. The porter enters quietly. Another coffee, sir? You shake your head. No, just leave the blinds open. He bows and leaves. You lean closer to the glass, the landscape rolling past faster than thought. Workers move like shadows across the yard, tiny figures swallowed by machines. Men in heavy coats push carts through snow and smoke, faces streaked with ash. Sparks leap into the air like fireflies dying too fast. You realize that somewhere in this web of steel and steam, your name sits at the top of the payroll, the name on every pay stub, every injury report, every unmarked grave. What would you see if you could step off the train and walk among them? Would they recognize your face, or just the fear your name inspires? The whistle screams, cutting through the roar of the engine. A group of laborers glance up, shielding their eyes. Their movements are slow, deliberate, exhausted. One of them stumbles, and two others rush to help him stand. They're not rivals. They're survivors. You can almost smell it now. The metallic tang of sweat and smoke, the faint sting of burning coal, the scent of something that feels like sacrifice. Inside your car, the air smells of cologne and polish. The distance between those two worlds feels infinite, and measured in inches. How close can comfort sit to cruelty before it begins to blur? If progress were a person, would you shake its hand, or flinch from the burn? You glance down at your hands, immaculate, gloved, useless. Hands that have never swung a hammer, never shoveled coal, never blistered for bread. Carnegie's voice echoes in your head from breakfast. They'll remember the skylines, not the sweat. You wonder if that's true, or just what men like him tell themselves to sleep. The train slows, wheels grinding as it passes a smaller station. Through the smoke, you catch a glimpse of something that freezes you. A child, no more than 12, hauling a bucket nearly as big as himself across the rail yard. His face is black with soot, his coat torn. He glances up as the private car rolls by. For a second, your eyes meet. He doesn't wave. He doesn't smile. He just stares. And in that stare, you see it all, everything you've tried not to see. What do you say to a child whose childhood was melted down to make your fortune? Could you meet his gaze without apology? The boy disappears behind a wall of steam, swallowed by the machinery. The train picks up speed, carrying you away before guilt can take root. Inside the car, the silence feels heavier than coal. You pour yourself a small measure of brandy, not for pleasure, but to keep your hands from shaking. The glass trembles against your lips. Outside, the furnaces flare again, lighting the sky like a false dawn. A false dawn, that's what this age is, you realize. All light, no warmth. The porter reappears. Shall I prepare lunch, sir? No, you whisper. Not yet. He nods and disappears once more. You turn back to the window. The mills stretch endlessly, factories, smelters, rail yards, all connected like veins in a colossal body. A body made of sweat and soot and silent endurance. Somewhere in there, men are dying young so your train can glide on time. So your palace can shine in Newport. So your breakfast can arrive from across an ocean. And yet, the newspapers call this progress. The politicians call it destiny. The preachers call it providence. You call it what it is, extraction. Can a nation rise on the backs of broken men without breaking itself? What happens when the foundation begins to remember it can feel pain? The sun sinks lower, the light turning copper molten. You catch your reflection again in the glass, your own face superimposed over the burning horizon. Looks like a confession. You whisper to yourself, "We built a cathedral of wealth and filled it with ghosts." The words fog the window, fading as quickly as they form. Outside, a bell tolls from somewhere deep in the yards. A shift change. Hundreds of men pour out of the gates, their silhouettes moving in unison. A dark river of humanity flowing toward rest that won't restore them. The sight stuns you. Not because it's new, but because it's real. You finally see it, unfiltered, unedited, undeniable. What if progress isn't a staircase, but a seesaw, where one side can only rise if the other is pressed into the dirt? And which side are you really on? The train whistles again, louder this time, as though mocking your revelation. Steam floods the window, erasing the world outside. When it clears, the mills are gone, replaced by open fields dusted in snow. The landscape looks peaceful now, innocent, almost pure. But you know better. You've seen what lies beneath. You sit back, eyes closed, the rhythm of the train pulsing beneath you. The brandy burns your throat, but not enough to wash the taste of guilt away. How many comforts are built on someone else's exhaustion? And when history remembers this age, will it call you visionary or accomplice? The carriage sways. The rails hum. The land rolls on. You open your eyes just as the porter reappears. "We'll reach Philadelphia within the hour, sir," he says softly. You nod, but your voice doesn't come. You're still staring out the window at a world that feeds you and bleeds for you. By the time your train glides into Grand Central again, night has fallen. The city glows like a living furnace, gas lamps flickering, streetlights hissing in the cold air. Steam rises from every grate, as if New York itself exhales smoke from the same fires you saw in Pittsburgh. Your carriage awaits, already warm, already waiting. Hargrove stands by the open door, his timing perfect as ever. "Welcome back, sir," he says. You nod, stepping inside, the scent of leather and lavender overwhelming the faint memory of coal and sweat. Isn't it strange how quickly comfort reclaims you? How easy it is to forget the smoke once you're back in velvet. The horses start forward. Fifth Avenue rolls beneath the wheels like a polished runway. Mansions glow behind iron gates, chandeliers blazing through tall windows. You pass the clubs of the elite, men laughing over brandy, women gliding through foyers in silks imported from Paris. And just like that, the world of the mills feels like another planet. At the corner of 57th, a crowd gathers around the entrance of the Metropolitan Opera. The carriages, the jewels, the tuxedos, this is where your peers perform their own kind of labor, the labor of appearance. A doorman waves you over. "Evening performance of Carmen, sir. The Astors are inside. Shall I announce your arrival?" You hesitate. You hadn't planned to attend, but refusing would draw attention. "Yes," you say quietly. "Announce it." The door opens. Flashbulbs crackle. You step into a blizzard of light and luxury. Inside, the air smells of perfume and wealth. Every glance, every whisper carries calculation. Women tilt their heads in practiced poise. Men shake hands with the precision of diplomacy. "Vanderhughes," someone calls. You turn to see Mrs. Winthrop, the widow from your dinner party, gliding toward you in shimmering silver silk. How good to see you back among the living. We were starting to think you'd retire to your seaside palace for good. Business in Pittsburgh, you reply. Her eyes light with curiosity. Ah yes, the strike. Simply dreadful. But at least it's keeping the radicals in check. We can't have workers dictating policy, can we? Her words sting. You glance at her diamond necklace, each stone large enough to buy a family's future. She catches your gaze and smiles as if she said something charming. When comfort mocks suffering, what do you call it? Ignorance or evil? And how many polite smiles does it take to silence a scream? The orchestra begins to tune. You follow her into the gilded auditorium, where gold leaf and cherubs fill every inch of the ceiling. The seats glimmer with silk gowns, opera glasses, and restless vanity. As the music begins, you find yourself unable to focus. The story, love, jealousy, death, feels like a parody of the world outside. On stage, actors suffer beautifully in tune and in costume. Offstage, suffering has no melody and no one applauds. The soprano's voice soars, sharp and perfect. The audience holds its breath, not from empathy but admiration for technique. You glance around, the Vanderbilts, the Morgans, the Goulds, all watching tragedy as entertainment. You whisper to yourself, they come to feel something without risking anything. Do we seek art because we crave emotion, or because we buried it too deep to find alone? When pain becomes performance, who profits from the applause? The performance ends in thunderous clapping. Roses fly. People cheer. And as the curtain falls, the audience rises relieved. The tragedy was pretend. They can now return to their real-life comfort without consequence. At the reception that follows, crystal glasses clink like tiny bells of denial. A senator greets you warmly. Fine work with the mills, Vander Hughes. The papers say order's been restored. A triumph of discipline. You nod mechanically, though you haven't yet given any order at all. Rumors travel faster than morality. Tell me, the senator continues, will you be hosting your summer gala again? The Breakwater Ball has become something of a tradition. Breakwater Hall. You almost laugh. That empty monument to vanity sitting above the Atlantic. Already people crave another excuse to worship themselves within its walls. Why do we celebrate success louder than we question its cost? If a man builds a palace on suffering, does beauty make it less cruel? You murmur a polite promise to consider the matter, and drift toward the balcony for air. Outside, the winter wind cuts through your coat, honest and cold. Below, a man in rags sells roasted chestnuts from a metal cart. The scent wafts upward, smoke, salt, survival. He works while the wealthy waltz. The contrast burns more than the wind. You stare down at him, and for a moment the opera's music echoes again, not as art but as irony. The melody of a world perfectly in tune with its own hypocrisy. If civilization is a song, who gets to choose the key? The singers on stage, or the ones sweeping the floor when the curtain falls? The theater doors open behind you, laughter spilling into the night. Mrs. Winthrop waves from the stairs. Come, Vander Hughes. They're serving champagne in the atrium. You turn once more toward the street. The chestnut seller is packing his cart, breath visible in the dark. He looks up, just as the boy in Pittsburgh did, and your eyes meet again, two worlds crossing for the briefest moment. Then he looks away. He has no reason to remember you, but you'll remember him. Inside, the orchestra begins again, softer this time, music for dancing. You take one last look at the man below, his small fire flickering against the cold stone of the city. Then you step back through the gold-plated doors into a world that calls itself civilization. When wealth builds walls high enough to silence the world. How long before the wind outside starts sounding like truth? The night after the opera feels strangely still. Your mansion stands silent against the hum of New York. Gas lamps flicker in the street below, shadows stretching across the marble floors. Somewhere a clock ticks too loudly. You can still hear the soprano's final note from Carmen echoing in your head, a song about love, jealousy, and death. It lingers longer than it should. You pour yourself a drink, amber light swirling through the glass. The reflection of the city shimmers in the liquid, towers and bridges born of your fortune, glowing against the dark. You built this, or so you tell yourself. But tonight it doesn't feel like pride. It feels like a confession written in steel and smoke. A knock interrupts your thoughts. Enter, you say. Hargrove steps in, solemn, holding a silver tray. A yellow telegram rests upon it. The message just arrived from Pittsburgh, sir. he says quietly. You take it, fingers cold against the thin paper. It's only a few words, but they feel heavier than the entire mansion. Violence at mill. 3 dead. Dozens wounded. Governor considering militia. Await instructions. You read it again. And again. The letters blur, but the meaning doesn't. Your mill, your empire, is bleeding. What would you do if your wealth suddenly spoke to you, not in profits, but in names of the dead? Would you still call it success? You lower the telegram. Hargrove waits, expression unreadable. Shall I prepare a response, sir? No, you whisper. Not yet. He bows slightly. Very good, sir. Then, after a pause, will there be anything else? You want to tell him yes, that you need someone to explain how a life can be worth less than a day's wage. But the words won't come. Nothing else, you finally say. When he leaves, the silence expands until it feels like pressure in your chest. You walk to the window. The city glows, oblivious. Below, carriages roll past, couples laugh, orchestras play in mansions identical to yours. You look down at your hands. They're shaking. Not from fear, but from recognition. You know this story. You've read it before in history books, in speeches, in headlines. You just never imagined you'd be inside it. How far can civilization rise before it begins to crush the people holding it up? When progress demands pain, who decides how much is enough? Your mind drifts to the mills, the men swinging hammers in the snow, the boy with the bucket, the furnace glowing like judgment. Now there are 3 less among them, and perhaps more by morning. You imagine their families waiting at doors that won't open again. Wives staring at telegrams just like yours. Only theirs don't start with sir. You pour another drink, but it doesn't help. The sound of ice against glass feels like distant gunfire. Sir? You hadn't heard Hargrove return. He stands at the door, hesitant. There's also a letter delivered by courier. From Mr. Carnegie. Of course there is. You take the sealed envelope, the thick paper embossed with his name. It smells faintly of cigar smoke and iron. You break the seal. Handle this swiftly. The papers are watching. Sympathy is weakness. A single line scrawled beneath it. Remember, progress always has casualties. You stare at the handwriting, bold, confident, merciless. The kind of man who never doubts the morality of winning. Would you rather be powerful and feared or powerless and right? Can a man be both builder and destroyer and still sleep at night? You set the letter beside the telegram. 2 documents side by side, one from power, one from pain. And between them, your conscience balancing like a coin about to fall. You move to the study. The fire burns low, the coals glowing faintly red, like the furnaces of Pittsburgh reflected in miniature. You open the ledger on your desk. Columns of numbers, clean and unfeeling. Profits, expenses, wages. None of them contain blood. You pick up a pen. For a moment, you consider writing orders. Raise wages, improve safety, stop hiring children. But the pen hovers, unwilling. Because you know what will follow. Rebellion from partners, outrage from investors, betrayal from peers. Morgan will sneer. Carnegie will mock. The papers will crucify you. And yet, the boy's face lingers. The empty eyes of the dead you've never met won't leave you. You press the pen to paper. Ink spreads like a wound. But instead of writing a command, you write a question. What is the price of being human in a system that rewards the inhuman? The pen stops moving. You stare at the words until they blur. Then you close the book. Have you ever done something right, knowing it will cost you everything? Would you risk your place in the world to save your place in your own soul? The clock chimes midnight. The sound echoes through the empty halls of the mansion. Outside, a gust of wind rattles the windows, like distant knocking from another world. Maybe it's the ghosts of the mills calling for acknowledgement. Maybe it's just the wind. Either way, it doesn't let you rest. You fold the telegram, place it in your pocket, and turn toward the door. There's only one thing left to do. Prepare the rail car, you tell Hargrove when he returns. He blinks. Tonight, sir? Yes, tonight. We're going to Pittsburgh. For a brief second, you see it, something flickering in his eyes. Respect, perhaps, or fear. Then he bows. At once, sir. As he disappears down the hall, the house falls silent again. You stand in the doorway, staring at the dying fire. The flames flicker, then fade. And in the ashes, you think you see shapes, the outlines of men, women, children, flickering, waiting. When the world burns for your comfort, How long before the fire reaches your own door? You put on your coat and step out into the cold night. The wind cuts sharp, clean, honest. For the first time in your life, the air tastes like truth. The platform glows with cold gaslight. Steam coils around the wheels of your private rail car, ghost-like in the dark. Porters move briskly, loading trunks, sealing doors, checking lamps. The air smells of iron and rain, the scent of departure. Hargrove stands beside the open carriage, collar up against the wind. Your quarters are prepared, sir. We'll depart as soon as the engine takes on water. You nod. The city behind you hums. Laughter from the opera district, carriage wheels clattering on stone, champagne still being poured in golden rooms. You turn away from it all and step into the train. Inside, the car is an empire in miniature. Mahogany panels, velvet drapes, crystal lamps swinging gently. Everything gleams, everything shines. You almost hate it now. As the train lurches forward, New York begins to slide past the window, 1,000 lights fading into distance, swallowed by darkness. You sink into your seat. The rhythm of the rails begins its slow hypnosis. Have you ever left behind everything you built? Not because you wanted to, but because you had to look at it from far away? What would your empire look like from the outside? The porter brings tea. You thank him softly. He hesitates before leaving, maybe sensing something different tonight, some heaviness in the air. When he's gone, you take out the telegram again. The words blur and the lamps flicker, but they don't lose their weight. 3 dead, dozens wounded. You whisper them aloud. They sound worse when spoken. More real, more final. The train whistles, a long, mournful cry that seems to echo back from the hills. Outside, America rushes past in darkness. Fields frozen in winter, rivers glinting faintly under moonlight, scattered towns flickering like dying embers. You think about the people in those tiny lights. Families gathered around stoves, children asleep on straw mattresses, men waking before dawn to work your rails, your mines, your mills. They'll never see this train. They'll never ride in velvet. But they built it. How do you measure the distance between luxury and labor? Is it miles or morality? The wheels hum. You pour yourself brandy but barely taste it. Each sip feels like confession. You remember something Dr. McPherson said in Newport? The human body was not designed for the pressures of modern business. He'd meant palpitations and ulcers. He hadn't meant this, the moral weight pressing down like gravity. The door opens quietly. Richardson, your valet, steps in carrying a folded blanket. It's a long journey, sir. Thought you might want this. You nod. Thank you, Richardson. He lingers, uncertain. Forgive me for saying so, sir, but this trip to Pittsburgh, is it wise? The reports mention violence. The workers are angry. I know, you say. He hesitates again. They'll see you as the cause, sir, not the solution. You look out the window. Maybe they're right. Would you still walk into danger if you knew the blame was deserved? Or would you stay hidden behind the walls money built for you? Richardson shifts awkwardly, then says, I've packed your revolver, sir, just in case. You almost laugh, as if a bullet could solve this. Keep it, you say quietly. If trouble comes, I doubt it'll respect names or titles. He nods, unsure whether you're joking, and leaves. The door clicks shut. You sit alone again, the train swaying gently. Your reflection stares back from the window, pale, tired, framed by darkness and motion. Behind that reflection, the countryside rolls on endlessly, indifferent. The train passes through smaller towns now, clusters of dim lights, church steeples, rail yards. At one crossing, you catch a glimpse of something, a group of men huddled around a bonfire near the tracks. They look up as your private car flashes past, faces half lit by firelight, eyes hollow. You can't hear them, but you can imagine what they'd say. Maybe they curse your name. Maybe they pray for mercy. Maybe both. If you could stop the train and face them, what would you say? Would you offer an apology or an excuse? The whistle sounds again, a long, lonely cry that echoes through the valleys. For a moment, you close your eyes and imagine it's something else. Not steel on rails, but a voice from another time. Maybe history itself, warning you. Once a system starts feeding on people, it doesn't stop until it's full. You open your eyes. The fire from the men's camp fades into darkness. In the lamp's reflection, you see your own face again. Not the polished image of a tycoon, but the haunted eyes of someone caught between centuries. You think of the boy at the mill, the beggar on Fifth Avenue. the chestnut seller outside the opera. They're all passengers on this train, invisible, unpaid, uninvited, but always there, pressed between the wheels and the rails. What if every mile of progress makes that grinding sound, the sound of people being dragged along beneath it? Could you still call it forward motion? The train slows briefly as it crosses a bridge. Below, a river shimmers, black water reflecting the pale moon, carrying the ghost of steam across its surface. You wonder how many lives, how many hopes, how many futures this river has carried away from the factories and mines lining its banks. You whisper to yourself, we call it the age of progress. But progress for whom? No one answers. Only the steady, relentless rhythm of the train. You lean back, exhausted, but your mind won't quiet. Every sound, the wheels, the whistle, the wind, feels like a heartbeat echoing from another world. A heartbeat that's slowing down. You close your eyes trying to rest. But even in darkness you see it. Smoke, fire, blood, and the faint glint of steel. The cost of empire paid in silence. If history gave you one more chance to choose, wealth or conscience, which would you take? And would you believe yourself when you answered? The train surges forward again, faster now, cutting through the night like a blade. You don't know whether it's heading toward redemption or ruin. But either way, there's no turning back. The whistle screams as the train brakes grind against the rails. Through the window, the first light of dawn spills across a city made of smoke. Pittsburgh, the steel heart of America, pulsing, burning, unrelenting. You can smell it before you step outside. Coal dust, sweat, iron. The scent of creation and destruction mixed into one breath. Your private car shudders to a stop beside the main platform. A porter opens the door, his face pale. We've arrived, sir. You rise slowly. Your reflection in the brass door handle looks like someone else. Older, heavier, carved by guilt. As you step out, the cold air slaps your face. The sound of the city hits next. Hammers, shouting, distant whistles. The station isn't crowded with travelers. It's guarded. Men in uniform stand watch near the gates, Pinkertons. Their rifles glint dull under the morning fog. Beyond them, groups of workers gather in clusters. Caps pulled low, coats threadbare, eyes sharp with suspicion. They watch your carriage. They know who you are. What would you feel walking into a crowd that blames you for their hunger? Would you defend yourself, or just listen? Richardson appears at your side, carrying your coat. Sir, he whispers. The local manager awaits by the carriage. He advises caution. The strikers are agitated. Good, you say quietly. So am I. You walk down the platform. Each step feels heavier, as though the ground itself resists your arrival. Men whisper your name as you pass. Vander Hughes. It doesn't sound like respect. It sounds like indictment. The factory looms ahead, its smokestacks clawing the gray sky. Posters hang on the brick walls. Fair pay or no work. No child labor. Some are torn, others splattered with mud. The wind flutters them like wounded flags. At the gate, a man in a bowler hat waits, your mill supervisor, Mr. Haynes. His expression is taut, his collar damp with sweat despite the cold. Mr. Vander Hughes, he says, forcing a smile. I didn't expect. Well, I mean, it's an honor, sir. Spare me, you reply. What's the situation? Bad, he admits. They've seized the yard. Production stopped. We called in the Pinkertons for protection, but... He hesitates. It got out of hand. How many, you ask? He swallows. 3 dead. 2 on our side. 1 worker. Dozens wounded. When violence wears your name, does denial make it less yours? Or is silence just another kind of weapon? You look beyond the gate. Hundreds of men stand outside the factory, some holding makeshift signs, others with bandaged heads and swollen hands. Their faces are raw, not hateful, just human and tired. One man steps forward. His beard is streaked with gray, his coat patched and thin. You come to see your kingdom burn, Mr. Vander Hughes? He shouts. The crowd murmurs agreement. I came to listen, you answer. Laughter ripples through them, bitter and cold. Listen, the man spits. You've got servants to polish your floors. Who polishes your conscience? The words strike like a hammer. You don't answer. You can't. The man gestures toward the factory. You built your palace from our bones. Every brick, every rail, every damn chandelier. We paid for it with our lives. You step closer to the gate. The Pinkertons shift uneasily, hands near their rifles. You raise a hand. No guns. Haynes looks horrified. Sir. No guns, you repeat. The guards lower their weapons. You face the workers, voice steady. 3 are dead. Nothing I say will change that. But I came here to stop this before more die. You could have stopped it years ago, someone yells. Where were you when that boy got pulled into the gears? Another shouts. Your throat tightens. The image flashes again, the article, the 12-year-old boy, the machine, the blood. You whisper, I was blind. The crowd falls silent, startled by the honesty. When power finally admits it was blind, is that weakness or the beginning of sight? Could you forgive someone who waited this long to see you? You continue louder now. I can't change the past, but from this day forward, shorter hours. No children under 14. Guards on every machine. Wages raised 10%. A murmur spreads through the workers. Haynes looks like he swallowed poison. Sir, he hisses, this will ruin us. Then let it, you say. If a company can't exist without killing its own, it doesn't deserve to exist. The man with the gray beard steps closer, eyes searching yours. You serious? You nod. Completely. Silence. Then, slowly, the man removes his cap. Then maybe we can talk. The crowd eases. Shoulders lower. The air shifts, fragile, uncertain, but alive. For the first time, the distance between you and them feels smaller than the fence between you. What if power isn't measured by how many obey you, but by how many you heal? Could mercy ever build something stronger than fear? The factory behind you groans, the sound of machinery cooling after a long night of rage. Smoke curls into the gray sky, drifting toward the rising sun. You realize the world doesn't change in speeches or telegrams. It changes one decision at a time, small, dangerous, irreversible. The Pinkertons stand down. The workers begin to disperse, murmuring, cautious, exhausted. You stay by the gate, watching them fade into the fog. For the first time since Breakwater Hall, you feel something that almost resembles peace. Not joy, just the faint quiet of doing something right after so much wrong. If redemption came at the cost of your fortune, would you still pay? Or would you cling to comfort until the world crumbled around you? The wind picks up, carrying the distant clang of steel. A new day has begun, for them, for you, for the machine that is America itself. And as the smoke lifts, so does the illusion. For the first time, the empire you built feels less like a monument, and more like a man's burden finally beginning to break. By mid-morning, the fog has thinned, revealing the full anatomy of the mill. The great furnaces rise like temples of labor, their chimneys breathing gray clouds into the pale sky. Ash settles on everything, iron rails, broken windows, your coat. Feels like the world itself has turned to dust and decided to stay that way. The strike has quieted, but not ended. Groups of workers linger beyond the fence, waiting, watching. Word has spread fast. The owner has come. He wants to talk. A makeshift table has been dragged into the open yard, old crates turned into seats. It looks absurdly small against the backdrop of the mill's blackened towers. Here, in the dirt, your empire looks fragile. Mr. Haynes stands beside you, shifting uncomfortably. Sir, if I may, this isn't how we do things. There's a chain of command. Not today, you say. Today, there's only a conversation. He opens his mouth to argue, but something in your tone silences him. A group of men approach from the gate. 5 in total, the workers' committee. Their faces are weathered, their eyes sharp with suspicion. At their center walks the gray-bearded man from earlier. His name, you've since learned, is Thomas Reed, a foreman who's worked in the mill since before you owned it. He stops a few feet away, tipping his cap in a gesture that feels more habit than respect. Mr. Vander Hughes. Mr. Reed. You gesture to the crates. Shall we? The men exchange uncertain glances, then sit. You sit too. For a moment, the absurdity strikes you. A tycoon worth millions perched on a splintered crate beside men who earn $1 a day. What happens when power sits down instead of standing above? Can humility undo what arrogance has built? The silence stretches, broken only by the hiss of cooling pipes and the faint hum of the wind. Finally, Reed speaks. You've seen it now, he says. The noise, the blood, the smoke. You built it even if you never touched it. So tell us, sir, what do you see? You meet his eyes. A machine that eats men. A few of the men shift, surprised. Reed doesn't move. And what will you do about it? I'll start with what I can, you say. Safer conditions, shorter hours, no more children in the mills, and pay that lets a man live, not just survive. Reed studies you for a long moment as if testing whether your words are real. Words are easy, he says finally. We've heard them before. Promises made, promises buried. Why should we believe this time's different? You take a breath, because this time you think it's not a performance. I came here to see what I've been pretending not to see, you say. And now that I have, I can't unsee it. Maybe I'm too late. Maybe I don't deserve your trust. But I'll earn it if I can. One of the younger workers, his face still bruised from the riots, leans forward. You rich folk always talk like you're doing us a favor. What about justice? What about what's owed? You nod slowly. You're right. It's not charity. It's debt, and it's long overdue. Reed's expression softens just slightly. He leans back, folding his arms. You're not like the others. No, you say quietly. I just ran out of excuses. Have you ever realized the villain in your story was you, and kept going anyway? When guilt becomes unbearable, is it shame, or the start of redemption? The wind picks up, carrying the sound of hammers from the other end of the yard. A few men have already returned to work, cautiously testing the truce. Reed glances toward them. They're scared. Not of the Pinkertons, but of hope. Every time we've hoped, it's cost us. You look at the furnaces. Then let's make it cost me this time. He studies you again, this time with something like respect. You'd risk your fortune for this? You nod. If it keeps burning men alive, what good is it? A long pause. Then Reed extends his hand across the table. You've got yourself a deal, Mr. Vander Hughes. You shake it, rough, calloused fingers gripping yours firmly. It's the first honest handshake you've had in years. The other workers stand. Some nod in cautious approval, others watch silently. But there's something different now, the beginning of possibility. Could history have turned out differently if men had listened instead of commanded? How much suffering comes from people too proud to say, I was wrong? As the meeting ends, Reed turns back to you. You'll have enemies for this, you know. Not us, them. The ones who think profit's more sacred than people. I already do, you say. But maybe that's how I'll know I'm finally doing something right. He smiles faintly. Then I'll pray you've got the strength to keep it up. You watch them walk back toward the gates, tired men moving a little straighter now. The factory whistles once more, but this time it sounds less like a command and more like a beginning. The morning light breaks through the smoke, faint but persistent. It glints off the metal rails, the iron beams, the dirt under your shoes. It even warms your hands, the same hands that once signed the orders, now trembling from the weight of undoing them. When the light finally reaches a world built on shadows, will it cleanse it, or reveal how deep the darkness really goes? You exhale. The city exhales with you. For the first time, you feel what power might truly mean. Not dominance, not wealth, responsibility. And as the sun climbs higher over the steel horizon, you realize redemption doesn't arrive in gold. It arrives covered in ash. By evening, the mill yard is quiet. The fires have cooled, the shouting has stopped, and the air, for once, carries more hope than smoke. You stand on the catwalk above the furnaces, watching the last rays of sunlight shimmer through the haze. It looks like the world exhaling after a storm. For the first time since Breakwater Hall, you feel lighter. Not proud, not victorious, just honest. Below, workers move carefully among the machines, repairing damage, cleaning, speaking in low voices. Their movements are slower, gentler, as if the entire factory, like you, is learning how to breathe again. Mr. Haynes joins you, hat in hand. His voice trembles slightly. Sir, they're saying the strike's over. You nod. No, we've just started building something different. He hesitates, unsure whether to agree. Still, he says, it's remarkable. They listen to you now. You turn toward the sunset. Maybe because I finally listened to them. Can authority survive when it begins to feel empathy? Or is compassion the one act that power can't afford? The train whistle in the distance interrupts your thoughts. A reminder that the rest of your world still moves at its usual speed. You know what waits beyond this small island of peace. Boardrooms, telegrams, outrage. Men who measure morality by quarterly profit. And right on cue, a messenger appears at the edge of the yard, hat pulled low against the wind, yellow envelope in hand. He hurries toward you breathless. Telegram from Mr. Vander Hughes. From New York. You take it. The paper feels heavier than it should. The message is brief, but every word lands like a blow. Stocks plummeting. Investors demanding statement. Morgan calls emergency meeting tomorrow. Consider position. Board. You read it twice. Then again. Your reforms, your mercy, have cost millions in a single day. Haynes catches the change in your face. Sir? You hand him the telegram. His mouth tightens. They'll come for you, sir. They always do. I know. What's the price of a conscience when the currency is control? Would you still choose to be human if it meant becoming powerless? The sun disappears behind the smokestacks. The mill's shadow stretches long across the dirt, swallowing your boots. For a moment, you feel it, the pull of the old world, the temptation to take it all back. To restore order. To restore wealth. To restore comfort. But then you remember the boy with the bucket. The man at the fence. The fire in their eyes. The same fire that built everything around you. You turn to Haynes. Have the men pay double this week. Tell them it's for lost time. He blinks. Double? Sir, that'll? Yes, I know what it'll do. Do it anyway. He nods slowly. You'll make enemies of every magnate in the country. You almost smile. Then I'll have the right enemies for once. The next morning, your private rail car waits again, but this time it feels less like luxury and more like exile. The workers gather by the gate as you prepare to leave. Thomas Reed steps forward, removing his cap. Didn't think I'd see the day a man like you left a place better than he found it, he says. You clasp his hand. Hold me to it. If the promises fail, send word. Don't let them bury it. He nods. Godspeed, sir. And good luck. You'll need it where you're going. The whistle sounds. You step aboard. The train jerks forward, pulling away from the yard. The workers fade into the distance, their silhouettes framed by smoke and sunrise. You watch them until they vanish completely. For a long time you sit in silence. Then, with a sigh, you unfold the telegram again. The words glare up like an accusation. Stocks plummeting. Consider position. The empire you inherited is rejecting its conscience like a body rejects a new organ. What happens when morality becomes bad business? Can an age obsessed with progress forgive the man who slows it down? The landscape outside changes. The mills give way to fields, then towns, then the vast, restless heart of America. The same country you thought you owned now feels untouchable, immense, alive. It doesn't belong to you. It never did. You pour coffee from the silver pot, the steam curling like ghostly handwriting in the air. On the table lies a blank sheet of stationery. You dip your pen, hesitate, then begin to write. To the board of directors. Gentlemen, effective immediately, I resign my position as managing director of Vander Hughes Steel. If the choice is between profit and decency, I choose the latter. You pause, ink dripping onto the paper. The words look strange, fragile, final, free. Would you surrender everything you built to save what little of yourself remains? Could you walk away from the empire that bears your name and not look back? You sign your name. The signature looks smaller than usual, but truer. Outside, the wind howls past the windows, shaking the frame. It sounds like applause. Or maybe it's just the rails reminding you that movement always costs something. You fold the letter, seal it, and hand it to Richardson. See that it's sent ahead to New York. He stares at you, startled. You're stepping down, sir? You nod. For once in my life, Richardson, I'd rather sleep at night than dine with kings. He says nothing, but the corner of his mouth twitches. Not quite a smile, but close. You lean back as the train rolls on, watching the last smoke of Pittsburgh drift away behind you. The sun breaks through the clouds, soft and gold, painting the rails ahead like a path leading somewhere new. When you finally give up everything that isn't real, what remains, ruin or freedom? You don't know yet. But for the first time, the uncertainty feels like peace. New York greets you not with celebration, but silence. The same city that once bowed to your name now watches and whispers. Newspapers line the kiosks, headlines in black ink. Vander Hughes defies industry. Stocks fall as steel magnate breaks ranks. The moralist of the Gilded Age. The words sting more than they flatter. They sound less like praise, more like warning. Your carriage moves through Fifth Avenue under gray skies. Breakwater Hall gleams in your memory, but the city feels colder now. Every mansion you pass seems to sneer. You can almost hear the laughter behind the curtains. He's lost his mind. He's forgotten his class. By noon, you're standing in front of the Morgan Library, a temple of marble and money. The doorman opens the heavy brass door without a word. Inside, the air smells of cigars and power. A butler leads you into the main room. A long mahogany table dominates the space, its surface polished to a mirror's perfection. At its head sits J. Pierpont Morgan, broad-shouldered, immovable, fingers tented like a man about to perform surgery on civilization. Beside him, Carnegie, smiling thinly. Harriman, Frick, Gould, the Titans. Your peers. Your judges. Morgan's eyes find yours first. Vander Hughes, he says, voice smooth but sharp. We've been discussing your actions. You take a seat at the far end of the table. The distance feels deliberate, the geometry of power. Carnegie leans forward. You've made quite the spectacle, my friend. Wages raised. Hours reduced. No child labor. Admirable ideals for a priest. He chuckles. No one else joins. Morgan clears his throat. Let's be plain. Your decisions have caused instability. Shares in your company dropped 12% in a week. Other mills are facing demands for the same concessions. You've set a precedent we cannot afford. You meet his gaze. Perhaps you can't afford not to. Morgan's expression hardens. Do you know what happens when one pillar weakens, Vander Hughes? The structure collapses. You are that pillar. Have you ever walked into a room where everyone has already decided you're wrong? What would you do? Argue or let the silence speak for you? Carnegie waves a cigar lazily. Don't take it personally, old boy. We all have our experiments. You tried morality. It's quaint, but the markets don't pay for sentiment. You lean back calm. And what do they pay for, Andrew? What? Broken spines? Boys torn apart in your mills? The room stiffens. Carnegie's smile dies. Frick scowls. Watch your tone, Hughes. Why? You ask quietly. Because I stopped pretending that our fortunes aren't built on graves? Morgan taps the table once, a quiet, ominous sound. Enough. His voice cuts through the air like a blade. He rises slowly, walking toward the window. Outside, the city glows through the fog. Towers, smoke, movement. The men who built this country, he says, were not philosophers. They were builders. They understood that civilization requires hierarchy, masters and laborers. Remove that structure and you invite chaos. You stand too. And what if the structure is the chaos? He turns, eyes narrowing. Idealism doesn't suit you. You were one of us once. I still am, you reply. But maybe I've started asking what kind of men we are. If you realized you were sitting at a table built from injustice, would you stand or keep eating because the food was good? Morgan returns to his chair. You will issue a statement, he says coldly. You will rescind your reforms. You will restore order. The investors demand it. And if I don't? Carnegie smirks. Then the markets will devour you. You'll lose everything: factories, rail contracts, credit, reputation. You'll be a cautionary tale whispered over brandy. You take a slow breath. Then you reach into your coat and pull out a folded letter, the resignation you wrote on the train. I already sent my statement, you say, placing it on the table. The silence is absolute. Morgan stares at it as though it's a weapon. Carnegie laughs once, disbelieving. You're serious. Completely. Frick slams his hand down. You fool. Do you think your pity will change the world? You'll die broke and forgotten. You meet his fury with calm. Maybe. But I'll die awake. What's more terrifying, losing everything you own, or realizing it owned you all along? Morgan exhales through his nose, controlled but furious. Then you're finished, Vander Hughes. You've exiled yourself from power. You nod. Then perhaps power was the exile all along. You turn to leave. Carnegie calls after you. When they come for you, and they will, don't expect sympathy from the men you tried to save. You pause at the door. I don't expect it, you say, but I'll have peace. And that's more than you can buy. Outside, the heavy doors close behind you with a sound like judgment. The city waits, alive, indifferent, endless. You breathe deep. The air tastes sharp, metallic, real. When the world finally stops clapping for you, what kind of man do you become? The ghost of an empire, or the beginning of something new? You step down the marble stairs into the gray afternoon, coat billowing in the wind. Behind you, the titans remain, discussing losses, damage control, the next fortune to build from the ruins of conscience. But ahead, somewhere beyond the smoke, you sense the faint outline of another America, one not yet born, waiting for men brave enough to lose everything to find it. The first headlines arrive the next morning. Vander Hughes walks away from millions. Steel King betrays investors. Moral madness or political genius? The newspapers are merciless. Caricatures of your face appear on every corner, jaw exaggerated, eyes wild, holding a torch that burns dollar bills. They call you the penitent tycoon, the monk of industry, the man who lost his nerve. You thought losing wealth would feel like death. Instead, it feels like drowning slowly, the water rising inch by inch as your old world watches from the shore. Letters flood in by the hundreds, some anonymous, spitting rage. You've doomed us all. You've given power to the mob. Others written in trembling, ink-stained hands. Thank you. My husband died at your mill. I pray your heart finds peace. The first kind burn faster, but the second stay longer. How would you handle being praised and hated for the same act? Which voice would you believe, the one that flatters or the one that aches? By the end of the week, the markets begin to feed. Shares collapse. Rivals seize contracts. The board moves swiftly. Within days, your name is erased from the company's ledger. Vander Hughes Steel becomes Union Consolidated Metals. They buy your empire for half its worth and still call it mercy. The banks withdraw credit. Your estate in New York is sold for the good of creditors. Breakwater Hall, that marble monument to pride, is listed at auction. You read the notice in silence, the type too small for the enormity it contains. Richardson enters quietly. They've arrived, sir. The assessors. You nod. He hesitates. Will you keep anything? You look around at the vast emptiness. Portraits, chandeliers, tapestries, trophies of excess. All of it suddenly feels ridiculous. Nothing, you say. Send it all. He nods slowly, eyes soft with something like grief. If everything you ever owned vanished tomorrow, would there be anything left of you worth saving? That night, you wander through the house one last time. The floors creak beneath your steps. The echo of your own footsteps feels like someone else's memory. In the music room, the piano is closed, its surface gathering dust. In the ballroom, the chandeliers hang like frozen constellations. In the library, rows of unread books stare back. Knowledge never used, wisdom never applied. You stop before a mirror framed in gold. The reflection is almost unrecognizable. The man who once filled this house with noise and arrogance now stands small beneath its ceilings. Was it worth it? You whisper. No answer. Only silence, the truest companion money ever bought. The following morning, the auction begins. Carriages line the drive. Journalists hover like vultures. Inside, bidders lift numbered cards, their voices rising and falling in polite chaos. Lot 47, Louis XIV dining set. Lot 112, portrait of Vander Hughes by Sargent. Lot 208, silver tea service monogrammed. Each item sold feels like a confession spoken aloud. Every bid is another chapter of your past being erased. By noon, Breakwater Hall belongs to someone else. A railroad baron's wife. She smiles for the camera as the papers flash. You stand by the cliffs, away from the crowd. The sea crashes below, furious and endless. Salt sprays your face, cold, clean, honest. For the first time in years, you breathe without servants hovering, without schedules or shareholders, without the weight of pretending. What if freedom isn't owning everything, but having nothing left to lose? Could ruin be the only honest form of wealth? You leave quietly, unnoticed. No carriage, no entourage, just a small leather suitcase and a coat heavy with salt air. Richardson follows a few paces behind. Where to, sir? He asks. You think for a moment, then smile faintly. Anywhere without marble. He chuckles softly, the first genuine laugh you've heard in weeks. The road away from Breakwater winds through pine and fog. At the last bend, you stop and glance back. The mansion looms against the gray sky, beautiful, pointless, hollow. For a brief moment, you think you see movement at one of the upper windows, a shadow passing by, like the ghost of your former self still pacing the halls. Then the clouds shift and it's gone. You turn away. The wind off the Atlantic roars, swallowing the house behind you. You walk on, coat whipping in the gale, each step lighter than the last. Would you trade power for peace if it meant disappearing from history? Or is legacy just another kind of prison, built from names instead of walls? As the path dips toward the coast road, Richardson catches up. "Sir," he says quietly, "what will you do now?" You glance toward the horizon, the sea stretching infinite and gray. "I'll see the world," you say. "Not the world I bought. The one I never looked at." He nods, eyes distant. Then maybe it was worth it after all. You walk on together, the wind carrying the last echoes of Breakwater Hall. The house that once screamed success, now whispering lesson. The ocean waits ahead, vast and unspeaking. You've spent a lifetime trying to own the world. Now at last you're ready to belong to it. When empire ends, does the man inside it begin? Or was he there all along, waiting for the walls to fall? The road bends west, toward a new horizon. You keep walking. The morning after the auction, the world feels too quiet. No servants, no telegrams, no schedules. Just the sound of the sea breaking against the cliffs. Steady, eternal, unbothered by human fortunes. You stand by the roadside, a small suitcase in hand. The wind bites at your coat. The driver who brought you from Newport has already gone. No one knows where you are. And for the first time in your life, that feels like freedom. You start walking. The road snakes inland through fields rimmed with frost. Farmhouses lean against the wind, their roofs patched with tin and prayer. A farmer waves from a wagon, his horse plodding slow through the ruts. You lift a hand in return. He doesn't recognize you, and that too is freedom. What would it feel like to step out of your own name? If no one remembered your fortune, would they finally see you? By noon, you reach a small town, a handful of wooden buildings crouched beside the tracks. The sign reads, Millhaven, population 713. A general store, a church, a tavern. Smoke curls from chimneys. Chickens scatter as you pass. You enter the diner, the kind of place that smells of coffee, bread, and long days. A woman behind the counter looks up. "Mornin'. Coffee?" You nod and take a seat by the window. The cup arrives steaming, chipped at the rim. It's better than anything the chef at Breakwater Hall ever made. A few men glance your way, curious. Your coat is too fine, your shoes too polished, your posture too deliberate. But poverty, like wealth, teaches silence. No one asks questions. If you could start over among strangers, what truth would you keep, and what lie would you let die? You spend the afternoon walking through town. Children chase each other down dirt alleys. A blacksmith hammers in rhythm with the wind. The sound is steady, honest, the music of survival. You stop at the churchyard. Graves lean against one another, names half erased by time. So many stones. So few years carved between birth and death. You kneel, brushing dirt from one. Samuel, age 11. A mill boy maybe. One of thousands whose hands fed the machines that made men like you rich. The guilt rises, but this time it doesn't paralyze you. It humbles you. You whisper, "I'm sorry." The words vanish into the wind, but maybe that's enough. That night, you rent a room above the tavern. The wallpaper peels. The mattress sags. The lamp smokes. And yet, you sleep better than you have in years. Not because you're comfortable, but because you're honest. Days become weeks. You work odd jobs. Mending fences, loading grain, sweeping the station platform. Your hands blister, then harden. The people begin to know you, not as a tycoon, not as a scandal, but as a quiet man who does what's asked without complaint. They call you George, your first name, stripped of the surname that once ruled cities. Fits better now. In the evenings, you sit outside the tavern, pipe glowing in the dusk. Farmers talk about weather and crops. The women gossip about the preacher's new horse. It's all wonderfully, painfully ordinary. When life stops demanding spectacle, do you finally start hearing its music? Could peace be hiding in the smallest, dullest corners of the world? One night, a boy approaches. Barefoot, smudged with coal dust. He stares at your hands. "You ain't from here, are you?" "No," you say. "But I'm trying to be." He nods solemnly, then grins. "You hammer like my pa." You laugh. "I'll take that as a compliment." He shrugs. "He died last year. Mill accident." The grin fades as quickly as it came. "I'm sorry," you whisper. He looks up, studying your face. "You sound like you mean it." "I do." The boy nods again, then runs off into the dark. You sit there long after he's gone, the stars sharp against the velvet sky. You think of the mills, the mansions, the men still sitting at Morgan's table. You think of the boy's words, simple, unpolished, true. You sound like you mean it. For the first time you do. When forgiveness comes, it rarely knocks. It just sits down beside your guilt and calls it human. Could you forgive yourself not for what you did, but for finally seeing it? The night deepens. The town sleeps. And you realize something quietly miraculous. You are no longer haunted. The ghosts of Breakwater Hall have followed you this far, but they grow quieter now. Maybe they see you working, sweating, failing, finally part of the same fragile world they died building. Maybe they've forgiven you too. The next morning, the wind smells of spring. The hills beyond Millhaven shimmer faintly green. You shoulder your small bag, lighter now half empty, and start walking again. The road stretches west, unpaved, uncertain. It has no name, just dust, sun, and possibility. You don't know where it leads, and for once, that doesn't frighten you. When the map ends and the road begins, who are you, the man who once owned everything, or the one who finally belongs nowhere and everywhere at once? You smile. The wind carries the scent of soil and rain, the smell of things that grow. You walk on into the unknown. And this time, for the first time, you're walking towards something real. The road takes you west through small towns that barely appear on maps. Names fading on weathered signs, lives written in dust and wood smoke. By the third week, you arrive in Harrow Junction, a crossroads town surrounded by wheat fields that ripple like gold oceans. A farmer named Caleb Turner gives you work repairing fences. He doesn't ask where you're from, only if you can lift a hammer and wake before dawn. That's how trust works here, built from calluses, not contracts. The pay is small. The days are long. But each sunset feels earned, not purchased. Have you ever felt your body remember what honesty feels like? The ache that comes not from guilt, but from work honestly done? You learn the rhythm of the land. The creak of wagon wheels before sunrise. The cry of crows trailing the plow. The smell of soil after rain, richer than any perfume poured in Newport ballrooms. Caleb's wife, Martha, feeds you bread and stew without ceremony. Their children giggle at your polished speech and old-world manners. You talk funny, the youngest says one night. You smile. I'm learning to talk like people who mean what they say. At dinner, they speak of simple things. The price of grain, a sick cow, a cousin married in the next county. It feels foreign at first, then oddly comforting. A world that measures wealth in harvests and laughter, not in ledgers. When night falls, you sit on the porch beside Caleb. The fields glow silver under the moon. He lights his pipe, passing it wordlessly. I used to think the rich had everything, he says. Then the banker took my neighbor's farm. Man hung himself in his barn. Ain't seen the banker smile since either. He exhales smoke. Guess misery don't care about money? You nod. No. It just changes its furniture. Do you think suffering is equal, rich or poor? Or does one kind wound the body while the other hollows the soul? Days blend into weeks. Your hands toughen. Your back bends. You begin to forget the weight of your former name. At night, your dreams no longer smell of coal smoke and velvet, only grass and rain. One evening, a storm tears through the valley. Wind howls against the walls, shaking the roof. You and Caleb rush to the barn to secure the animals. Lightning flashes white against the fields. For a moment, the world is pure sound, wind, rain, hooves, heartbeats. When it's over, you're soaked through and laughing. Martha brings towels, muttering about foolish men who think they can fight the sky. For the first time in years, you laugh until it hurts. The next morning, you help rebuild the chicken coop. Caleb studies you for a long moment. You work like a man who's lost something, he says. You pause, hammer mid-swing. Maybe I've lost what never belonged to me. He nods slowly. That's the best kind to lose. If losing what never mattered gave you peace, would you still mourn it, or let it drift into the dust like everything else the wind takes? That night, you share supper with the Turners. Martha serves cornbread still warm from the oven. The children fight over who gets the end piece. You let them win. You always do. When Caleb bows his head to say grace, you find yourself whispering along. Not out of habit, but gratitude, not for wealth, but for enough. Outside, the cicadas sing like an endless lullaby. The house smells of firewood and cornmeal. The light from the oil lamp flickers across faces that have never seen your picture in a newspaper, never cared for your name, only the kindness in your hands. And it strikes you quietly but completely. These are the people you once believed were beneath you. And yet, their lives carry a dignity your empire never could. What if greatness was never about wealth or power, but the ability to live quietly, honestly, and still be kind? You sleep in the barn loft under a patchwork quilt Martha insisted you take. Through the cracks in the boards, the stars spill in, sharp, infinite, impossibly bright. You count them until you forget what you were counting. For the first time, you don't feel like a ghost haunting history. You feel like part of it, small, mortal, real. In the distance, a train whistle moans, carrying the world of steel and marble that once defined you. It sounds far away now, like something from another lifetime. You roll onto your side and smile to the dark. Tomorrow will bring fences to mend, grain to haul, bread to share. Nothing to prove, nothing to own. And for the first time since Breakwater Hall, you realize you are truly alive. Could you live an ordinary life after tasting empire? Would you trade crowns for calluses if it meant sleeping without ghosts? Outside, dawn begins to paint the sky in soft strokes of pink and gold. The fields shimmer awake. The world, for all its sorrow and beauty, turns once more, and you turn with it. Autumn creeps softly over the valley. The wheat turns amber, the nights grow cold, and the air smells of harvest smoke. You've lived in Harrow Junction nearly 6 months now. Your hands are scarred, your back strong, your heart quieter. But one morning, the town wakes to a new arrival, a traveling preacher. He rides in on a mule and sets up a rough wooden pulpit beside the general store. A hand-painted sign dangles from the wagon. Reverend Silas Crane, salvation for all who seek it. He preaches at sundown, the crowd gathered in a loose half-circle. Farmers, wives, children, even the skeptical blacksmith. You stand at the edge, unsure why you came. Curiosity, perhaps. Or maybe you've finally grown tired of your silence. The preacher is nothing like the ones from New York. No fine robes, no polished Latin. His voice is rough, his hands weathered like bark. He speaks not of punishment, but of mercy. Not of judgment, but of the ache to start again. Redemption, he says, ain't earned in gold or guilt. It's in the doing different after you know better. The words hit harder than you expect. You shift your weight, eyes on the dirt. Have you ever heard a stranger describe your entire soul without knowing your name? If someone offered you forgiveness without asking what you'd done, would you take it? After the sermon, people drift away, murmuring thanks. You linger. The preacher wipes sweat from his brow, noticing you. Evening, friend, he says, his voice kind. You travelin' through? For now. He nods, studying your face. You carry something heavy. You force a smile. Doesn't everyone? He chuckles. But yours looks expensive. You blink. He doesn't mean money. You sit together on the wagon's edge as the sun bleeds into the hills. He hands you a tin cup of coffee that tastes like burnt hope. I used to be rich, you admit quietly. He doesn't flinch. And now, I'm not. Better or worse for it? You stare into the distance, watching smoke rise from the fields. I don't know yet. What would you say if someone asked whether losing everything saved you? Would you tell the truth, even if you still didn't know it? The preacher nods slowly, as if that uncertainty is holy in itself. Then you're halfway there, he says. He reaches into his coat and pulls out a small wooden cross, hand-carved and worn smooth. Made this myself, he says. Not much, but it's seen its share of storms. He presses it into your hand. Keep it. Not for faith, for reminder. Reminder of what? That a man's worth ain't in what he keeps, but what he can still give away. You turn the cross over in your palm. It's simple, unadorned, a far cry from the gilded icons that once hung in your Newport halls. But it feels honest, warm from his hand. He smiles faintly. Tell me something. When you had everything, were you happy? You laugh softly. No, just louder. That's the devil's trick, he says. Makes noise sound like joy. He stands, stretching his back. You'll find quiet is louder than you think. Then, as quickly as he came, he tips his hat and walks off toward the tavern. By morning, he's gone. But the cross stays. You carry it everywhere after that, in your pocket, through the fields, by the fireside. Not because you've become religious, but because it steadies you. It reminds you that the road back to being human doesn't run through marble gates, but through mud, rain, and the hands of those who don't ask what you've done. Weeks later, the harvest ends. The Turners hold a small gathering, laughter, music, pies cooling on windowsills. Martha makes you dance with the children. You step on their feet and they howl with delight. For a few fleeting moments you forget who you were. You are simply George, the man who mends fences, laughs too loudly, and smells faintly of smoke and hay. As night falls, you walk to the edge of the fields. The stars glimmer cold above. You take the cross from your pocket and turn it over in your fingers. "I'm trying," you whisper. The wind moves through the wheat, soft as breath. And somehow that feels like an answer. What if forgiveness isn't a thunderclap, but a quiet evening where the sky doesn't judge you anymore? Could redemption simply be peace? You close your hand around the cross and let the silence settle. Tomorrow there will be work to do. And for once you're looking forward to it. Winter rolls in early that year. Frost whitens the fences before sunrise, and the Turner's farm sleeps beneath a thin veil of ice. You chop wood in the mornings, breath turning to smoke, your muscles remembering strength without pride. Life has narrowed to something beautiful: eat, work, rest. Until one morning, a stranger arrives. A man in a wool coat and city shoes, far too clean for Harrow Junction. He steps off the morning train carrying a leather satchel and an air of purpose. By noon, he's asking questions at the general store. Tall man, graying hair, refined speech. Works for the Turners. The shopkeeper squints. "You mean George? Quiet fella. Hard worker." The stranger nods, jotting something in a notebook. "A reporter." By dusk, word reaches you. Caleb finds you by the barn. "City man's been a skin after you," he says, wiping his hands. "You in trouble?" You force a calm smile. "No, just history trying to find its way home." What would you do if the world came looking for the version of you you've buried? Would you run, or let it see what you've become? That evening, as the sun dips low, you spot the reporter approaching the farmhouse. He's young, sharp-eyed, carrying a folded newspaper under his arm. You meet him halfway down the dirt road. "Mr. Vander Hughes?" he says. Not a question. You sigh. "Not anymore." He studies you. "Then who are you?" You glance toward the horizon, endless fields, the smell of earth and smoke. Someone who learned too late what wealth costs. He opens the newspaper. Your old face stares back, younger, prouder, empty-eyed. "People thought you were dead," he says. "Some said you fled to Europe. Others said you'd gone mad." He lowers the paper. "But here you are, mending fences in a town that barely has a post office." You smile faintly. "Seems I traded marble halls for quieter ghosts." He chuckles, but there's curiosity behind his tone. "Why, Mr. Hughes? You had everything." "Did I?" He hesitates. "The country's changing. Men like Morgan, Carnegie, even Frick, they're stronger than ever. Some say your episode was the first crack in their armor." "Episode," you repeat softly. "That's what they call a conscience now?" He looks down, embarrassed. "I want to tell your story," he says. "The truth, not the headlines. The man who walked away from an empire." You shake your head. "The truth isn't a headline. It's a burden. You sure you want to carry it? If the world wanted to turn your regret into entertainment, would you let them, or protect your silence like a prayer?" He takes out his notebook. "What would you say to those who still curse your name? The investors who lost their fortunes, the families who say you betrayed your class?" "I'd say they mistook a man's reflection for his soul." He writes quickly. "And the workers? The ones in your mills?" You meet his gaze. "Tell them I'm still working for them, just with my hands now instead of their blood." The wind picks up, scattering dead leaves between you. He closes his notebook slowly. "You could return, you know. The public loves redemption stories. A man like you could still shape history." "I already am," you reply, gesturing to the land, the small farm, the smoke curling from chimneys. "Just not the part that gets written down." What if being forgotten was the price of being free? Would you pay it, even knowing history remembers the wrong men? The reporter's expression softens. "You don't sound like a man who regrets his choices." You smile. "Regret is easy. Change is work." He hesitates, then tucks his notebook away. "I'll tell them you're alive, but maybe not where." "Thank you." He extends a hand. You shake it, rough fingers meeting smooth. Two Americas touching for a moment before drifting apart again. When he's gone, you walk back to the farmhouse. The Turners are by the fire, children asleep, the air warm with stew and wood smoke. Martha glances up. "Everything all right?" "Yes," you say. "Everything's fine." But later that night, as you lie awake beneath the rafters, the past whispers again. The sound of crystal glasses, the clatter of silver trays, the ghostly laughter of men who think power lasts forever. For the first time in months, sleep comes slow. Not from guilt, but from knowing peace is fragile, and the world never stops looking for those who try to leave it behind. You roll onto your side, staring at the faint outline of the wooden cross hanging on the wall. Maybe redemption isn't hiding. Maybe it's learning how to be found and not crumble when they call your name again. Could you face the world that once destroyed you? Not to reclaim your power, but to prove you finally don't need it? The wind hums through the cracks in the roof, not cruelly this time, but like an old song. You close your eyes, letting the sound carry you into sleep. Tomorrow will bring work, sunrise, and the unending quiet of the fields. And somewhere in the city's noise, your name will be spoken again. Not as a warning, not as a legend, but as a question. What became of the man who gave up the world? The story breaks a week later. Vander Hughes found living among farmers. The tycoon who walked away. From palaces to plowshares, the strangest redemption in America. You see the headlines by accident. The folded newspaper left on the counter of the general store. Your hands tremble slightly as you turn the page. The article is kind. Too kind. It calls you a man of conscience in an age of greed, and paints the Turner's farm as a symbol of America's moral rebirth. You close the paper slowly. George? Caleb calls from the wagon. You coming? You fold the newspaper and slip it under your arm. Yes, you say, just finishing a chapter one didn't mean to start. By sundown, the town knows. Martha reads the article aloud by the fire, her voice soft with awe. The children stare at you with wide eyes, not fear, not judgment, but something like wonder. You were really him? The eldest whispers. I was, you say quietly. He frowns. But you're still you, ain't you? You smile. I'm trying to be. What if people only began to admire you once you stopped needing their admiration? Would you take back your fame, or leave it buried in the dust? Over the next few days, strangers start arriving in Harrow Junction. Reporters, photographers, even curiosity seekers. They come to see the fallen titan turned farmer. They ask for pictures, for quotes, for the meaning behind your transformation. You give them almost nothing. The meaning, you say, is in the work. But they don't want work, they want spectacle. And for once you refuse to sell it. One reporter from the Herald insists on a final question. What do you think your life proves, Mr. Vander Hughes? You look out over the wheat fields, gold under a pale sun. That it costs less to be human than to pretend to be a god. The quote runs the next morning. It becomes a headline. IT costs less to be human. People begin repeating it, in churches, in schools, even in factories. It takes on a life you never meant it to have. Weeks later, a letter arrives. No signature, only a return address, Pittsburgh Mill number 3. You open it slowly. Inside are 2 lines written in a worker's rough hand. We heard what you did. Our boys say it's better now. Thank you. You stare at the words until they blur. Then you fold the letter, place it inside your jacket, and say nothing. No one needs to see your eyes tonight. What if your redemption was measured not in wealth regained, but in lives that no longer break the way they once did? A month later, a delegation of workers appears at the farm. Rough men in patched coats, hats in hand. They stand awkwardly at the gate until Caleb calls for you. You're the man who changed our hours, the oldest says. We thought you'd be 10 feet tall. You laugh softly. I used to think I was. They tell you about the mills, shorter shifts, fewer injuries, no children at the machines. Not miracles, but progress. The new owners kept your rules, one says. Said the press made it too dangerous to change them back. You feel something in your chest loosen. Not pride, not triumph, just quiet relief. You nod. Good. Then it was worth it. Still, another worker says, we wanted to see the man who did it, just to say thanks. He extends a calloused hand. You take it without hesitation. His grip is strong, the same strength that once built your empire. Don't thank me, you say. I'm the one who should have known sooner. Could you accept gratitude you don't deserve, knowing it came from those who suffered because you didn't understand fast enough? They leave before sunset, walking down the dusty road. Their silhouettes fade into the amber light like ghosts forgiven. You watch until they're gone. Then you turn to Caleb. He's smiling, pipe between his teeth. "You ever notice," he says, "the world only remembers rich men when they lose their money?" You chuckle. "Maybe losing it is the only interesting thing we ever do." The two of you stand in silence as the sky turns violet, the last light clinging to the fields. That night, you sit by the fire, the letter from Pittsburgh in one hand, the wooden cross in the other. The two things weigh almost the same, both carved by hands rougher and holier than yours. You realize maybe for the first time that your story isn't ending, it's dissolving. Into soil, into rumor, into something small and good. What if the only legacy worth leaving was a life no one needed to envy, only to understand? You place the cross on the mantle, the letter beside it. Two relics of the same redemption, one built from faith, the other from flesh and work. The fire cracks, the wind sighs, and outside, somewhere far beyond these quiet fields, the city still hums with its old hunger. But here you have something it will never understand. Peace that asks for nothing. A name that finally means no one special. You lean back in your chair and whisper, almost smiling, "Let them keep the marble. I'll take the dust." The first snow comes early that year, soft, dry flakes that whisper against the window panes. You're mending a harness by the fire when Caleb brings in the post. "Letter for you, George," he says, dusting off his coat. Looks important. Fancy paper. The envelope is heavy, sealed in dark red wax. You don't need to see the handwriting to know. It's from Edward, your son. You hold it for a long time before opening it, afraid that touching the past might collapse the fragile piece you've built. Finally, you break the seal. "Father, I don't know if you'll ever read this. The papers say you're living under another name somewhere out west. They also say you've lost your mind or found your soul. I hope it's the second. I remember the last time I saw you, the morning you left for Pittsburgh. You didn't say goodbye. Mother said you had business. Then the letters stopped. Then the house emptied. Do you know what it's like to grow up being told your father is both a legend and a cautionary tale? At school they whispered that you went mad for pity, that you traded fortune for guilt. For a long time I hated you for leaving. Then I started reading the papers again. The mills, the reforms, the men who didn't die because you changed the rules. And I realized maybe you didn't leave us. Maybe you left what was killing you. I want to understand. I want to see you. Tell me where to find you, Father. Please. Edward." You read it twice, then a third time. Each word lands like a small hammer on the heart, steady, unrelenting. You sit for a long while in silence, the letter trembling slightly in your hands. The fire pops, snow hisses on the roof. Caleb glances up from his chair. "Bad news." You shake your head. "The opposite. What would you do if the person you'd hurt most finally forgave you? Not with anger, but with understanding? Would you be brave enough to face them again?" That night, you walk to the barn, unable to sleep. The wind whistles through the cracks. The air smells of hay and frost. You unfold the letter again, tracing Edward's handwriting with a trembling finger. He was 12 when you last saw him, sharp-eyed, too serious for his age. You wonder what kind of man he's become. Does he laugh easily? Does he walk like you used to, too fast, like the world was something to conquer? You think of all the lessons you could never teach him, not because you didn't know them, but because you hadn't learned them yet yourself. Is it possible to raise a better man by showing him your worst mistakes? Or does redemption die if no one carries it forward? The next morning, you sit at the kitchen table, the paper spread before you. You dip your pen, pause, and begin to write. "My dear Edward, I am alive. More alive than I ever was in marble halls or private trains. You must forgive me for not being the man you needed. I built monuments instead of memories. I filled our home with servants but not love. If you come, you won't find the father the world told you about. You'll find a man who hammers fences, mends boots, and prays he has learned too late what truly matters. If you wish to meet that man, follow the westbound line to Harrow Junction. Ask for the Turner's farm. You'll find me there. But if you choose to remember me as I was, grand, flawed, unreachable, then burn this letter and know that I died finally at peace. Either way, my love travels with you. Your father." You seal the envelope, marking it only to Edward Vander Hughes, New York. Then you walk to town through snow and wind until you reach the small post office by the tracks. The clerk takes the letter with a nod. "Going far?" he asks. "Far enough," you say. As the train whistle screams in the distance, you feel something lift, a weight that's been sitting on your chest for years finally melting into the cold air. If you could send one message across time to someone you love, would you tell them what you've done or who you've become? That night, you dream of your son as a child, his laughter echoing through halls now long empty, his small hand tugging yours toward the ocean beyond Breakwater Hall. You wake before dawn, tears drying on your face. Outside, the horizon glows faintly pink. The world keeps turning. And somewhere out there, on a train bound west, your son may be reading your words. You whisper into the stillness, "Come find me, Edward. I'll be here, waiting, not hiding." The wind answers, soft as prayer. And for the first time, the name Vander Hughes doesn't feel like a chain. It feels like a bridge. The morning sky burns pale gold above the frozen fields. You're splitting wood behind the barn when Caleb calls out, "George, someone's a skin for you down at the road." You set the axe aside, heart thudding. The wind bites sharp against your neck as you step into the light. At the end of the dirt lane stands a figure, tall, wrapped in a long coat, a suitcase in one hand, a familiar tilt to the shoulders. Edward, for a moment you can't move. Time folds in on itself. The boy you left behind, now a man staring at you like he's seen a ghost. He takes a step forward. "So it's true," he says softly. You smile, voice catching. "Seems so." He studies you, the beard, the rough hands, the clothes patched at the elbows. "You look smaller." You nod. That's what happens when you stop measuring yourself in walls. If you saw someone you loved after years of silence, would you rush forward or stand still until the air stopped trembling? He sets down his suitcase. "I almost didn't come," he admits. "I almost didn't send the letter," you reply. The wind moves between you, carrying the smell of hay and smoke. He glances around. "This is where you live?" "Yes, it's quiet here. Honest." He nods, uncertain. "Mother wouldn't believe it." "Does she hate me?" you ask quietly. He hesitates. "No, she just stopped waiting." That hurts more than hatred. You motion toward the porch. "Come inside. It's warmer." He follows, steps crunching over snow. Inside, Martha fusses, 2 mugs of coffee, a quick smile, then she retreats, leaving you alone in the flicker of the hearth. Edward sits stiffly. You sit opposite him, the firelight cutting deep lines across your face. For a while, there's only the pop of the logs and the whistle of wind through the cracks. Then he says it. "Why did you leave us?" You exhale slowly, staring at your hands, the same hands that once signed lives away on paper. "Because I didn't know how to stay without destroying everything around me, including you." He frowns. "You could have written." "I didn't know what to say." "How do you explain to your son that the empire he'll inherit is built on broken people?" He looks at you, anger flickering then softening. "So you gave it up?" "I had to. It was eating me alive." He leans forward. "And you think this," he gestures to the small room, "makes up for it?" You shake your head. "No, nothing makes up for it, but it makes sense of it." Could you forgive someone who destroyed your childhood, if you saw they had rebuilt their soul from the ruins? Or would you still demand the life they took from you? Edward's eyes glisten. "You know what the papers call you?" "I try not to." "The penitent tycoon," he says with a wry smile. You laugh quietly. "Catchy, isn't it? Almost sounds like a brand." He laughs too, the sound awkward but real. And for the first time, the silence between you doesn't feel like distance. It feels like space for truth to breathe. He studies you again. "You seem happy." "Not happy," you say softly. "Oh, there's a difference." He nods slowly. "I think I see that." Outside, the wind dies down. The air stills. You rise and gesture for him to follow. "Come on. There's something I want to show you." You walk out into the fields, snow crunching underfoot. The world is vast and quiet, the horizon glowing faintly rose beneath the fading sun. You point to the rows of fencing you built by hand, to the barn patched with boards you carried yourself. "This is what I do now. No investors, no servants, no noise. Every nail has a reason. Every mistake is mine." He smiles faintly. "You really built this?" "With help, with patience, with regret." You stop near the edge of the field where the land drops toward a frozen creek. Beyond it, the sun spills orange fire across the hills. "Do you see it?" you ask. "How small it all looks, the world that once owned us?" He follows your gaze and his breath catches. "It's beautiful," he says. "Yes," you whisper. "And it doesn't belong to anyone. When you finally show someone the life you built from your guilt, do you ask for forgiveness, or just hope they see you're trying? The two of you stand there in silence as the light fades. For a long while, neither speaks. Then, quietly, Edward says, "I think I understand now. You didn't leave us. You left the cage." You turn to him, eyes wet, smiling through it. "I'm glad someone finally said it." He steps forward, hesitates, then embraces you. It's awkward, arms uncertain, years between you like ghosts. But then it's real, strong, human. The cold bites your faces, but neither of you pulls away. For a moment, you're not the tycoon or the runaway or the boy left behind. You're just two men learning what love costs, and what it's still worth. Maybe forgiveness isn't given all at once. Maybe it grows slowly, like light after a long winter. Quiet, patient, inevitable. When you finally part, the stars are rising. He wipes his face, smiling. "I think I'll stay a while if that's all right." You nod, heart full. "There's plenty of work." He laughs. "Then I'll finally see what you traded fortune for." You glance at the sky. You'll see. It was a good bargain. The two of you walk back toward the farmhouse. Footprints trailing behind, two parallel lines in the snow, that, at last, have found their way together. The winter thaw comes early that year. Snow turns to mist, dripping from the eaves, feeding the dark earth below. In the mornings, the sky smells of wet soil and pine smoke, a world quietly waking up. You rise before dawn as always. Old habits survive everything. Empire, ruin, even redemption. You light the stove, pour water from the kettle, and wait for the first thin rays to break through the clouds. Edward joins you soon after. He's changed in these few months, the stiffness gone, the city polish fading. His hands are rough now, his voice gentler. You pass him a mug of coffee. He smiles. "You're up early," you say. "Like father, like son," he answers. You chuckle softly. The words echo in the quiet kitchen like a benediction. After breakfast, you walk the fields together. The ground is soft, ready for planting. Edward talks about staying, maybe buying land nearby, maybe building a small house of his own. "I used to think legacy was something carved in stone," he says. "Now I think it's what survives when no one's looking." You glance at him, proud, wordless. He's right. If your child grew wiser than you ever were, would you feel replaced or redeemed? Isn't that what every parent really hopes for? You pause by the fence line. The horizon glows pale gold. "I'm glad you came, Edward," you say quietly. "I'm glad you let me," he replies. "I was angry for a long time. But now I think I was just scared I'd end up like you." You smile faintly. "Then maybe I did something right if you were afraid of becoming me." He laughs, shaking his head. "You know, that's not much of a sales pitch for fatherhood." "Maybe not," you say. "But honesty's cheaper than marble." The day stretches slow and clear. Caleb joins you both to mend a stretch of fence. The work is light, but your hands tremble more than usual. The years have caught up. You feel it in your chest, the rhythm uneven, the breath shorter. By noon, the sun warms the fields, and you sit on a stump to rest. Edward notices. "You all right?" "Just tired," you say. "It's a good kind of tired." He nods, though his brow furrows. When he walks off to fetch more nails, you look out over the land. The barn, the smoke from the chimney, the endless rolling fields. Everything simple. Everything earned. You think of Breakwater Hall, cold marble, hollow laughter, chandeliers that outlived their owners. You think of the telegrams, the headlines, the gold that turned to ash in your hands. And you think of this, your son's voice in the distance, the smell of cedar and smoke, the fence that will outlast both of you. You realize quietly that you've made peace not by escaping history, but by learning to belong to it. If your last breath came with the scent of earth instead of money, would you call that failure or freedom? The sun slides low. Shadows stretch long. You feel the weight in your chest grow heavier. When Edward returns, you're still sitting on the stump, hands folded, eyes half closed. He calls your name softly. You look up, smiling faintly. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" He nods. "Yeah, it is." "Keep it that way," you whisper. He frowns. "What do you mean?" But you're already leaning back, eyes drifting toward the horizon. The breath leaves you slowly, gentle, unafraid. As the light spills across your face one last time. The funeral is small. Caleb carves the marker himself from oak. No marble. No titles. Just George Vander Hughes. 1850 to 1901. It costs less to be human. Edward stands by the grave long after the others leave. The wind stirs the grass. He places a hand on the wooden cross, the one you carried since that night with the preacher. He sets it in the soil beside your name. "I'll keep it going," he says softly. "I'll make it matter." He turns to leave but pauses at the gate, glancing back once more. The light catches his face, the same quiet strength, the same hint of melancholy that once defined you. But now it looks like hope. Weeks later, he writes to a friend in New York. "My father taught me that wealth can build walls or bridges. He spent half his life building the first, and the rest learning how to walk across the second. I intend to finish the crossing." The letter never makes the papers. But years later, when labor laws begin to shift, when wages rise, when the name Vander Hughes appears footnoted in some forgotten reform, the people who remember will say, "He wasn't the first to change the world. He was just the first to admit it needed changing." If history forgets your name but remembers your kindness, is that really being forgotten? Maybe immortality isn't marble or money. Maybe it's simply leaving the world a little fairer than you found it. The sun sets on Harrow Junction. The fields gleam like gold. And somewhere beyond the wind and time, a man who once built palaces sleeps in peace, his legacy no longer made of stone, but of forgiveness that finally took root.